Chapter 990. Sun Mama smiled and said, Nyang Nyang is right. It's just that one FO temple is at least 2 days away from here. Now that the rain has stopped, it's inconvenient to travel. If Nyang Nyang wants to go, why don't you give this servant some time to prepare? It'll be safer. The Empress smiled and said carelessly, What's there to prepare? Bring enough guards and we'll walk slowly. Along the way, we can enjoy the scenery after the rain. If we're tired, we can rest. If we're sleepy, we can sleep. Although we're going to want FO temple to pray, we can treat it as going out to relieve boredom. Sun Mama was slightly moved when she heard this. However, she was the Empress's servant and naturally had to be responsible for the Empress's safety. If anything happened to the Empress, she would be the first to be punished. It was because of Sun Mama's persuasion that the Empress did not force them to travel today and gave them time to prepare. Present at this time in the Wang Fu, Pang Xiao had just sent away the Taitan official with a dark face. When this man saw Pang Xiao, he told Pang Xiao about how Qin Yining claimed that she was jealous and didn't allow any Tatar woman to enter their house. His intention to drive a wedge between them was clearly written on his face. The 4 Taitan women he brought this time were different. It was as if Pang Xiao didn't agree, the Taitan people would continue to harass him. It was simply annoying. Pang Xiao strode back to the inner residence, his face as dark as the bottom of a pot. Qin Yining was eating milk. Seeing Pang Xiao enter with such an expression, he couldn't help but ask, What's wrong? Why are you so angry? Pang Xiao took the sky-green lid cup from Qin Yining's hand and ate half of the milk. His lips were white. Realizing that he had stolen Qin Yining's milk, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. I've been angered by the Taitan people. They are too stubborn. All day long, they come and pester me to agree to take concubines. Today, I don't know how big of a hole is in that person's head. He actually came to me and said that you're not good. I really want to close the door and not let any Taitan in next time. Qin Yining was amused. Since you don't like it, we won't meet again next time. It's just that Si Qin has brought people here. If I were to say that I didn't want to see him, it would be too rude. It would also be easy for people to use it against me. Pang Xiao pulled Zhao Jin over and sat down next to Qin Yining. Why don't I take you out for a walk? He walked around. You see, the Imperial Mausoleum hasn't been built yet, and I don't know what your Majesty's plans are regarding the thorough investigation of the materials in the Zhongyibo reports. But when the weather gets better and the construction of the Imperial Tomb starts, we won't have the chance to go out anymore. He might as well take advantage of his free time to play around Huichuan County. Firstly, I can relax. Secondly, I can get rid of those annoying Taitan flies, so that people won't secretly speculate whether I'm colluding with the Taitan to reach an agreement. Qin Yining was a little tempted. If he went out with Pang Xiao, he would be distracted and could just enjoy the scenery. This was naturally a good idea. That's a good idea, but wouldn't it be bad if we leave now? After all, the Taitan Khan was still here. If they left at the last minute, it would be bad if something happened. Pang Xiao knew that Qin Yining was worried. He couldn't help but rub her long hair. He smiled and said, What are you afraid of? Zhongyibo is very capable, so he won't be unable to handle such a small matter. With him watching over us, we just have to go out. You know his abilities well. Qin Yining was amused by Pang Xiao's nonchalant tone. Pang Xiao smiled and said, Of course I know. As an opponent, I should at least know myself and know my enemy. I think he knows a lot about me. Pang Xiao didn't want to mention Lu Heng in front of Qin Yining. She didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable. She smiled and changed the topic. How about it? Let's not bring too many people with us. Let's keep everything simple and go sightseeing around here for a few days. How about it? Qin Yining smiled and nodded. Of course it's good to be able to go out with you. Pang Xiao put his large hand on Qin Yining's shoulder. His lips landed on Qin Yining's forehead. Okay, as long as you agree, you can leave the preparations to me. I'll go and find out if there are any interesting places around Huichuan County. We'll go out and play for 3 to 5 days before coming back. When we come back and have enough rest, we'll think about where to go next. Qin Yining naturally smiled and agreed. Pang Xiao excitedly went to arrange for people to prepare the itinerary. Bing Tang and Ji Yun entered the room and said with a smile, Princess Consort, shall we also prepare? In, bring some light clothes and shoes. Also, bring some men's clothing for me. Also, bring some medicine for disguise in case I need it. The two maidservants smiled and agreed. They also went to prepare in high spirits. Qin Yining thought that he would ask Pang Xiao to bring along Huzi and Tang Xiao. The weather had cleared up, so everyone had the mood to have fun. Moreover, Ji Yun and Bing Tang had been bored by Qin Yining for a long time. It was naturally good to go out and get some fresh air. Pang Xiao wanted to bring Qin Yining out to play, so naturally, there was no need to inform anyone. The two brought along their trusted aides and left someone to look after the house. The next day, they directly left the city. Huichuan County was vast. It was located in the north, so even in the summer, it wasn't unbearably hot. However, the rain had just stopped not long ago. There were many wet spots on the road, so it wasn't very easy to walk. Fortunately, the group wasn't in a hurry. They walked and stopped along the way. When they came across a place with good scenery, they would stop to take a look. When they came across a village, they could stay there for the night. It was quite comfortable. At this time, in Zhong Yibao's residence, Lu Wenru carefully stood in front of Lu Heng and whispered. Today, the Taitan people went to the Wang Fu again. However, the Wang Fu's guard stopped them. They said that Wang Yi and Princess Consort had gone out. The Taitan people had no choice but to bring the beauties back. Lu Heng sat cross-legged beside the Kong table. His hand turned the lid of the white porcelain bowl up and down. His fingertips made a slight sound of porcelain rubbing against each other. After a while, he smiled. His tone was full of helplessness. They are really comfortable. It's really enviable. Lu Wenru bowed his head and didn't dare to speak. Your Majesty's decree was here. Lu Heng naturally had to obey the decree to welcome and entertain the Taitan Khagan. The Taitan people always came to harass him and try to sow discord between the ruler and his subjects in Dezhou. Naturally, he couldn't avoid staying in the city. Even if he didn't agree with the Taitan people, just seeing the Taitan people frequently coming in and out of the residence was enough to make people suspicious. Only by hiding away could he be completely at peace. Lu Heng looked down at the teacup in his hand and said faintly, "Sometimes I really envy him. He has the intelligence to help his wife and the courage and drive to do as he pleases." Lu Wenru smiled submissively. "Uncle, don't say that. What you have, other people don't have. You know how many people envy you." Lu Heng smiled and shook his head, saying, "This is different in the end. Maybe people are never satisfied." Lu Heng turned and said, "The Taitan beauties have all left?" "Yes." Lu Wenru said seriously, "You arrange for people to personally escort Madame to send them away. However, Madame has locked herself in her room right now. She must be angry." "Angry? She has the face to be angry?" Lu Heng said mockingly. "If she continues to do things without using her brain, it won't just be losing face in the future." Lu Wenru bowed his head. He never dared to interrupt in this kind of matter. "How are the preparations for the Empress carriage?" "Uncle, everything is ready. As long as the Empress says so, she can leave at any time." Lu Wenru said worriedly, "But the Empress is precious. It won't be good if she encounters danger when she goes out. If she makes a mistake, it will trouble Uncle. There is nothing to be done. The Empress has probably been in the palace for too long and has had enough of being a bird in a cage. Now that she has come out, she wants to find a chance to play. This is understandable. The only problem is that it is difficult to travel on the mountain path up one Fo temple. When the Empress arrives, she will know the difficulty and retreat." "Uncle is right." Lu Wenru nodded with a smile. Lu Heng was deep in thought. He called Lu Wenru to his side and whispered a few words in his ear. Lu Wenru's expression turned serious. He immediately responded and retreated. Percent Qin Yining and Pang Xiao walked and stopped all the way. After 3 days, they arrived at the foot of Jiuhuang Mountain, which was under the jurisdiction of Huichuan County. Looking up, the whole mountain seemed to be surrounded by white fog, which gave the feeling of being surrounded by clouds and mist. Huzi shaded his eyes with his hand and looked up at the top of the mountain. There was a temple leaning against the cliff. That should be one Fo temple. However, the mountain path is very steep. The carriage shouldn't be able to go up. Qin Yining held Pang Xiao's hand to get off the carriage. Pang Xiao carefully tidied Qin Yining's skirt. Qin Yining couldn't help but look up. He couldn't help but smile and say, "This one FO temple is built on such a high mountain. I wonder how much effort the craftsmen put in." That's right. This one FO temple is said to be very efficacious. There is an ancient tree on the mountain. It is said that the 1,000-year-old tree cried to death a dozen years ago. However, it sprouted last year. Those who sincerely make a wish here will be able to realize it. Pang Xiao pulled Qin Yining's hand and walked 2 steps forward. They stood under the shade of a tree on the side of the road. She smiled and said, "Let's go up together and make a wish. It will definitely come true. How about it?" Qin Yining smiled and said, "Of course it's good. Fortunately, I brought light clothes and shoes. It doesn't matter if the carriage can't go up the mountain. We can walk up." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "That's right. Let's park the carriage somewhere and bring enough dry food and water. We can walk up together." Bing Tang looked up at the clouds and mist at the top of the mountain. She couldn't help but swallow. "Wang Fei, why don't this servant stay behind and watch the carriage?" Qin Yining looked back. When he saw Bing Tang's bitter face, he couldn't help but laugh. Huzi jumped in front of Bing Tang and said with a smile, "It's okay. I can pull you up. What's the point of watching the carriage? Let's go up together and see the ancient tree. We can make a wish together." Bing Tang blushed and took 2 steps back. "I don't want to make a wish with you." Huzi chased after her. "Are you afraid of being tired? It's okay. If you can't walk, I can carry you up." He leaned closer to Bing Tang and whispered, "I can carry you up too." Bing Tang's face turned red. She forcefully stomped on Huzi's foot and ran to Qin Yining's side. Huzi was stepped on, but he still grinned foolishly. His appearance was simply unbearable. Tang Xiu looked at Huzi and Bing Tang and couldn't help but feel envious. She looked at Ji Yun hesitantly. Unfortunately, Ji Yun's martial arts were not weak. He probably wouldn't have the chance to carry her. Even if he wanted to curry favor, he couldn't do it. Chapter 991. The path into the mountain was very smooth and the slope was very gentle. Pang Xiao held Qin Yining's hand and walked in front. The group of people behind them chatted and laughed as they followed, enjoying the scenery along the way. When they were in a good mood, no one cared even if the path was muddy and their shoes got dirty. They only had eyes for the scenery and the people around them. Qin Yining whispered to Pang Xiao about the trivial matters of life. It was rare for them to put aside political affairs and devote themselves to nature. Qin Yining felt particularly relaxed and happy. However, after walking for about an hour, the mountain path became even steeper. "This path is too difficult to walk on." Bing Tang put her hands on her waist. Her small face was red from tiredness. Her forehead and temples were full of sweat, and her hair was stuck to her face. Huzi stood beside Bing Tang and fanned her with a large leaf. "Are you tired? Shall I carry you?" His tone was eager to try. Bing Tang rolled her big eyes and pushed Huzi away. She stepped on the slightly thick mud on the side of the road and walked 2 steps. However, the mud under her feet was too slippery, and she almost slipped and fell flat on her face. "Ouch!" Huzi quickly picked her up and laughed. "You are a potato spirit. If you fall and lose your front teeth, you will be even more unsightly in the future." Qin Yining panted and looked back at them. He shook his head in amusement. Looking around, the group of people on the road they came from had already distanced themselves. Xie Yu, Su Weiji, and Jinghu Wei had already been left far behind. They could barely see their figures. She and Pang Xiao walked in the front, followed by Jing Zhe and the other 3. Huzi and Bing Tang were behind them. Ji Yun walked behind Bing Tang. Tang Xiu followed Ji Yun carefully. She didn't dare to be more than 3 steps away from Ji Yun. It has been raining for 2 months. The mountain path is definitely difficult to walk on. Fortunately, the slope can't hold water and there are plants to hold it in place. Moreover, there are many cliffs and precipitous walls on this Jihuang mountain. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to bring you up here. Pang Xiao wiped Qin Yining's sweat with his sleeve. After such heavy rain, ordinary mountains can't be climbed. It is easy to encounter landslides and mudslides. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. "You're right. I know that you arranged everything properly before coming to climb the mountain with you. But Bing Tang is right. This wet road is too difficult to walk on. There's a thick layer of mud on the soles of my shoes. Qin Yining held Pang Zhao's hand and carefully moved to the side of the road. He rubbed the soles of his shoes against a big tree. Pang Zhao smiled and said, "It's nothing if there is mud. The most important thing is to have fun. Your body used to be so healthy. Ever since you followed me, your body has been deteriorating. If it were in the past, you wouldn't be so tired even if I asked you to run up the mountain, let alone walk up the mountain like this." Qin Yining smiled and shook his head. She didn't want Pang Zhao to recall the unhappy past. Your body is weak. Take good care of yourself and move more. You'll get better slowly. Qin Yining looked back. Mr. Xie and the others haven't caught up yet. Should we wait for them for a while? It's okay. I've arranged for people to follow them. They can walk up slowly. Let's continue walking slowly. Pang Zhao wiped Qin Yining's sweat again. He loved Qin Yining's rosy face and sweaty hair. She seemed to have lost the calmness and maturity forced by the world. She was like a carefree little girl. However, his sister, Yi, was born with a rough life. She was already busy with life when she should have been carefree. It was rare for her to have such a pure and relaxed time. Just taking her out for a walk could make her so happy. Pang Zhao held her slightly cold little hand with his big hand and cooperated with her footsteps. Every time she slipped or showed a masculine look on her face, he would give her a hand. When everything is over in the future, I'll take you out to play more often. Pang Zhao smiled. At that time, you won't have to be bothered by these trivial matters, and you won't have to worry about when we will be targeted again. You just have to care about what new flowers look like and what good rouge and face powder there are. You just have to worry about the children. Qin Yining smiled faintly. The life that Pang Zhao imagined was too beautiful, as she didn't dare to think about it. How could Li Qiqian let them go? The situation was so complicated. The treasure had not been owned yet, and Tayton had done something behind their backs. Since they were already in this circle, it would not be easy for them to get out. However, Qin Yining couldn't bear to make Pang Zhao feel even more upset. Okay, didn't we agree earlier that I will only take care of the children and not care about anything else? Pang Zhao felt guilty, and his smile was tinged with disappointment. Listening to the two of them talking, Mu Jinghu, who was walking with Jing Zhe and the others, also thought of Qiu Feishan, who was far away in the south. Although the two of them exchanged letters, it was not as reassuring as seeing her in front of him. He didn't know if his son would recognize him as his father the next time he saw him. Mu Jinghu thought of this and couldn't help but sigh softly. Pang Zhao's 5 senses were sharp, and he looked back. What's wrong? Are you tired? Of course not. Mu Jinghu walked very easily. Such a small mountain road is not difficult for me. I just feel that this kind of time is hard to come by. It's better to end this chaotic world as soon as possible. Pang Zhao pursed his lips and smiled, looking up at the lush green leaves covering the top of his head. The precious sunlight shone through the gaps between the leaves, drawing mottled shadows on their faces and bodies. After a long time, just when Qin Yining thought that Pang Zhao would not answer Mu Jinghu, he heard Pang Zhao say, "Okay, ending this chaotic world and ending a period of rule were two completely different things." Pang Zhao might have to pay more to make this promise, perhaps not only his life, but even a lifetime of time. The group walked up for about the time it took to burn 2 sticks of incense. At this time, their group was already very long, and the people were scattered because of their physical strength. Fortunately, there was only one way up the mountain. They walked in front and didn't have to worry that the people behind them couldn't find the way to Wanfo Temple. However, Qin Yining's long hair was already wet with sweat. Looking up, it was difficult to see how far they were from the top of the mountain with the trees blocking them. It was as if this rugged mountain road would never end. Come! Qin Yining looked down and saw Pang Zhao squatting in front of him with his back facing him. Come up, I'll carry you. Qin Yining shook his head and gently patted Pang Zhao's back. No need. Although I'm a little tired, it's not hard for me to persevere. It won't be too late for you to carry me when I can't walk anymore. Pang Zhao was a little disappointed. He turned back and looked down the mountain. He could vaguely see Huzi's figure carrying Bing Tang through the branches and leaves of the trees. Ji Yun and Tang Xiao had already fallen further away. Okay, Pang Xiao sighed. He pulled Qin Yining's hand and walked up a relatively clean slope. It's a pity that your physical strength is so good. Qin Yining was stunned for a moment before he understood what Pang Xiao was trying to say. His face couldn't help but heat up. He secretly pinched Pang Xiao's arm, causing Pang Xiao to laugh heartily. The mountain was silent. Their group had spread out again, so Pang Xiao's laughter could be heard far away. Are you Prince Zhongshuan? Suddenly, a woman's voice could be heard from afar. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao stopped in their tracks when they heard the voice. The voice was very familiar, but Qin Yining couldn't remember where he had heard it before. Pang Xiao leaned closer to Qin Yining and whispered in his ear, "It sounds like the Empress to me." The Empress? Qin Yining stared in astonishment. Pang Xiao turned around and gestured to Mu Jinghu. Mu Jinghu was shocked and immediately nodded. He quietly left the path up the mountain through a bush that wasn't easily detected. Jing Zhe and the others quickly walked behind Qin Yining, their eyes wary. Pang Xiao saw that Mu Jinghu had hidden in the shadows as they had agreed. Only then did he raise his voice and ask in confusion, "May I ask who is here?" "It really is Prince Zhongshuan? This servant is one of the Empress's people. The Empress's imperial carriage is here." Qin Yining paled when he heard this. Why was the Empress here? Pang Xiao held Qin Yining's hand and led Jing Zhe and the others towards the source of the voice. After walking for a while, a gentle slope of about 2 zhang appeared in front of them. On the platform, the Empress was resting in the shade of a tree by the side of the road with Sun Momo and a bodyguard. Pang Xiao hurriedly held Qin Yining's hand and quickly walked forward to bow. "This servant Pang Xiao greets the Empress." No need for formalities. The Empress wiped the sweat from her forehead and asked curiously, "Why are you here?" Qin Yining sensed that the Empress's tone was different from her usual high and mighty tone. When she spoke to Pang Xiao, her tone and expression were like that of a normal family's matriarch, dignified and intimate. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Replying to your highness, this servant saw that the weather was improving and was very happy. Thus, I brought my wife out for a stroll. I heard that there's a Wanfo temple on Juhuang Mountain that is very efficacious, so we came to take a look." Without leaving a trace, Pang Xiao had already scouted the surroundings. He thought for a while and said, "The Empress also came to play?" The Empress shook her head tiredly. This Empress came to Wanfo Temple to pray for the peace of the Zhou. However, this Empress came at a bad time. Not to mention that the mountain path is difficult to walk on. This Empress had originally prepared a sedan chair to send this Empress up the mountain. However, the sedan chair suddenly fell, and this Empress almost fell off the cliff. In order to save this Empress's capable bodyguard broke his leg. This Empress could only order the bodyguard to go down the mountain for treatment. That bodyguard can't walk, so 4 servants took turns to carry him. I don't know how he is now. Pang Xiao respectfully said, "The Empress' sincerity in praying for the people is truly touching." When Pang Xiao wanted to speak to the Empress, he bowed his head according to etiquette. His respectful attitude was clearly visible. However, his hand was still holding Qin Yining's hand behind his back. It was as if Qin Yining was his most precious treasure that he could not let go of for a moment. The Empress saw how tightly Pang Xiao protected Qin Yining, and an indescribable bitterness spread in her heart. Look at how Pang Xiao treated Qin Yining. Chapter 992. Ben Gong is just doing what should be done. What is there to be touched about? The Empress rubbed her sore waist. If it wasn't for the fact that there were so many people here, she would even want to pinch her feet that didn't feel like hers. It's just that the road to Wanfo Temple is too difficult. It's a good thing that Zhong Yibo told Ben Gong in advance, but Ben Gong refused to listen to his advice. Not only did the guard break his leg, but now he's stopped here. He can't go up or down. The Empress' tone was helpless and regretful. Sun Mama couldn't help but hold the Empress' arm and say, "Nyang Nyang, don't be like this. You've already done your best to pray for blessings. The strange thing is that one FO temple is built in such a dangerous place. Nyang is precious. How can you go to such a dangerous place? Since you've done your best, don't force it. Otherwise, if something happens to Nyang, how can this servant's heart be at ease? The Empress had always been considerate of the servants. Sun Mama knew that once she said this, with the Empress' usual personality, she would consider the feelings of the servants. She was the noble Empress. If something really happened to her under the eyes of these people, not to mention a big matter, even if it was a sprained ankle, they would be punished when they returned. But today, Sun Mama misjudged the Empress' thoughts. Ben Gong has already come here. I've already walked such a long road. As long as I walk the rest of the road, I can reach one FO temple. Ben Gong can't give up here. The Empress raised her head and looked at the road at the end of the slope that couldn't be considered a road at all. The following mountain road was almost all steep stone walls. Some places had protruding stones to stand on, and some places had wooden boards made of some unknown method. But perhaps it was because of the passage of time. The wooden boards had signs of decay. It seemed that if one stepped on them, they would break with a crack and people would fall. This road was so steep that it made people feel that even if they climbed up, they couldn't come down. Nyang, this is really too dangerous. Sun Mama said earnestly, this servant wants to serve Nyang, but this path, not to mention Nyang, even this servant can't climb up. We don't have anyone by our side. If the inner attendants hadn't been sent down the mountain, they would still be able to carry Her Highness up the mountain. But this servant doesn't trust the physical strength of those little eunuchs and their backs. If they were to bump into anything, wouldn't it be a joke? The Empress lowered her eyes as she listened to Sun Mama's words. Although she knew that what she said was quite reasonable, she was still extremely unconvinced. She was already here, but she had to give up halfway. On the other hand, Qin Yining's hand was held by Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao seemed to intend to lead Qin Yining all the way to the top. If Qin Yining could walk up the stairs, why couldn't she? That won't do. My prayers for the rain to stop have already shown some results. Now, the flood in the south is still serious. Not all cities and towns are as lucky as Huichuan County. Since I know that praying for blessings is effective, how can I retreat when passing by Wanfo Temple because the road is difficult? But Her Highness, we don't have anyone suitable to carry you up. How about we go down the mountain now and rest for a while? After this servant has made arrangements for the people, I'll send you up the mountain in a few days. What do you think? The Empress knew that Sun Mama's words are the safest way. But at this moment, looking at Qin Yining being held by Pang Xiao, and then looking at Qin Yining's clean clothes and her own sorry state, the Empress's bitterness and unwillingness became more and more difficult to suppress. She was the Empress, but in front of a courtier's wife, she couldn't even flatter her. The Qin clan could climb such a steep mountain because her man cared about her and had always been by her side to protect her. But even if she was the noblest woman in the world, she could only envy others in this matter. How could she be willing? Looking up at the steep mountain road that could be called a cliff, the Empress shook her head and said, I must climb the mountain today. She looked back at Pang Xiao. I believe that with Wang Ye's escort, I should be fine. Her Highness, you, don't say anything else. The Empress' voice was firm as she interrupted Sun Mama's persuasion. Then she smiled and said, with Prince Zhongshuan here, what are you afraid of? Sun Mama looked at the mountain road and then at Wang Yi and Wang Fei, who were holding hands and standing silently at the side. She couldn't help but feel helpless. Prince Zhongshuan was bringing Wang Fei up the mountain. It was normal for them to pull and even hug. They were husband and wife. But if the Empress was taken care of by Prince Zhongshuan, what would happen? This road was very steep. With the Empress's usually pampered body, she would probably retreat in exhaustion and fright before long. Did the Empress plan to have Pang Xiao treat her the way she had planned to help Qin Yining? The Empress seemed to be able to see what Sun Mama was thinking and couldn't help but laugh softly. No matter, you don't have to worry. To say something unpleasant in Ben Gong's eyes, Prince Zhongshuan is like a younger brother. How old was he when he became sworn brothers with your majesty? Ben Gong's relationship with him. Even if we don't go too far, We're at least uncle and sister-in-law. It's just climbing a mountain. Why can't we go up? Sun Mama saw that the Empress was determined, and her lips moved helplessly. She didn't know what she could say to make the Empress give up on today's trip. At this time, the Empress had walked in front of Pang Xiao. She looked at Pang Xiao, who was holding Qin Yining's finger, as though there was no one else there. That sourness and jealousy seemed to fill her mouth again. The Empress' smile was normal. Can Prince Zhongxun help Ben Gong? Pang Xiao carefully observed the Empress' expression. Seeing that the Empress' expression was not fake, he temporarily put down the noisy scenes of the past few days. Pang Xiao did not immediately agree. He also did not ask for how many servant girls he must have, or what he must eat and use each day. Because the mountain path was steep, normal palace servants and servant girls could not send the Empress to the top of the mountain. If they were not careful, they could harm innocent lives. The Empress saw Pang Xiao's hesitation, and her feelings were complicated. Pang Xiao could take Qin Yining with him. He was willing to carry or hold him. But she was not the same. She was the Empress, but in Pang Xiao's eyes, Qin Yining was the most important. The Empress couldn't help but bite her lower lip at this strong contrast. Seeing the Empress' expression, Pang Xiao lowered his eyes to think. A moment later, he said helplessly, "Nyang Nyang, Wei Chun still as guards. How about having the guards escort Nyang Nyang?" Chapter 993. The Empress was used to having a gentle personality. She rarely spoke so harshly. Qin Yining looked at the Empress's behavior from the side and felt it was strange. Why did it seem like the Empress wanted Pang Xiao to help her up the mountain? Qin Yining smiled and said, "Nyang Nyang, you are of noble birth. This mountain path is dangerous. Since the guards can't touch you, the palace servants can't do anything. You have already begged Huichuan County for the rain to stop and the weather to clear in the temple. As long as you are sincere, the gods won't care where you are. This mountain path is dangerous. Chenfu feels that it's best if you don't take the risk." The Empress suddenly looked at Qin Yining. She felt that her sweat-drenched face was flushed red. Her complexion improved, and she looked as lively as a 16 or 17-year-old girl. The Empress was nearing the age of 40, and she was old. Originally, when she saw Pang Xiao taking Qin Yining with him, and she could only watch helplessly, she was already a bit jealous. Seeing her like this, her heart became even more stifled. Wang Fei's words are reasonable, but Ben Gong has already come this far. People say that one FO temple is very effective. If Ben Gong gives up halfway, will Ben Gong punish me? Who could say for sure about such things? If this consort retreats for a moment and the rain comes again, who can take responsibility for that? Hearing the Empress's words, Qin Yining knew that she had made up her mind. If he tried to persuade her, it would turn from conflict to hatred. Thinking of this, Qin Yining didn't say more and left the decision to Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao's brows were furrowed, and he said disapprovingly, "Nyang Nyang's sincerity in praying to Buddha is admirable, but taking too much risk may not be a good thing." The Empress had been repeatedly persuaded and had accumulated anger. She could only suppress it in front of Pang Xiao. Her uncle, Ben Gong, has made up my mind. All right, Pang Xiao sighed. Since it's like this, Nyang Nyang should come with this subject. When the Empress saw Pang Xiao nod, her expression relaxed a little and her mood calmed down a little. Pang Xiao held Qin Yining's hand and walked up the steps that could not be considered steps. She stepped onto a rock and turned around to hold Qin Yining's hand. She smiled gently and said, "Sister E, can you climb up? Come up." Qin Yining was tall and slender, and she had lived in the mountains for many years. Whether it was her physical strength or experience, she was far superior to ordinary women. Although she was tired now, it was not to the extent that she could not even walk. She grabbed Pang Xiao's hand to borrow strength, and nimbly jumped up the stone steps. Due to the limited space on the stone steps, she let go of his hand and climbed up the next step made of logs. She leaned over and held onto it with her hand to climb up another big stone. Jingzhe and the other three followed closely behind Qin Yining, walking in front, behind, left, and right of her. She climbed up so deftly that the Empress, who was standing below, looked up and felt a bit of confidence. She also lifted her leg and stepped up. However, just as she stepped up, her other foot touched the ground. She felt pain in her foot, and her leg was sore. She had no strength left and almost fell backwards. Nyang Nyang, the bodyguards following closely behind, wanted to help her up, but because of what the Empress had said, they did not dare to touch her body. Pang Xiao quickly grabbed the Empress' sleeve and lifted her up. The Empress was still in shock. Her face was pale as she patted her chest. She turned and thanked the stalwart man who was much taller than her. Many thanks. Since Pang Xiao had agreed to help, he naturally would not show the Empress a sour face. He smiled and said, "Nyang Nyang is too polite." His appearance was very beautiful, with sword-like eyebrows and phoenix eyes. When he smiled, there was some softness in the curve of his eyebrows. This softness appeared on a famous general who had fought on the battlefield. It was especially precious. The two stood on the same stone step. The distance was so close that the Empress could even smell the faint fragrance of sesame and jasmine on Pang Xiao's robes. She knew that it was the fragrance of the rouge cream and hair oil that Qin Yining often used. It must have been on Pang Xiao when he hugged Qin Yining. The Empress' cheeks heated up and her heartbeat inexplicably sped up. She turned her face and walked up the next step. Pang Xiao could only walk at the back to protect the Empress and Qin Yining. Sun Mama anxiously walked in circles on the gentle slope. She was old and weak and could not climb to the top of the mountain. The guards tightly protected the Empress and could not help her. She could only bow to Pang Xiao. "Wang Yi, I beg Wang Yi to protect Nyang Nyang." "Newbie thanks you." Pang Xiao turned his head and said condescendingly, "Sun Mama does not need to worry. This king's guards are walking at the back. They will take you up the mountain later." "Many thanks, Wang Yi. Many thanks, Wang Yi." Sun Mama was overjoyed. She knelt down and bowed to Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao nodded slightly and followed the Emperor's footsteps. He was worried that Qin Yining would take the lead. He wanted to stay close to her, but he couldn't leave the Empress behind. Therefore, he walked very close to the Empress. The Empress could even feel the heat coming from the strong and tall man beside her. "Sister E, be careful. The soil above is a bit loose. Don't step there." "Yes, step on the soil next to it." Pang Xiao was worried that Qin Yining wouldn't be able to step steadily, so he easily jumped in front of Qin Yining. He bent down on the stable rock and hugged Qin Yining with both hands. He directly carried her up. Qin Yining hugged Pang Xiao's neck and was gently put down. The Empress was looking at them from behind. Her gaze was a bit strange. She couldn't help but feel her cheeks heat up. "I'm fine." She was a bit out of breath. She wiped her sweat and continued to climb. At this time, the Empress had already climbed to where Qin Yining was standing. She looked up at Pang Xiao and reached out her hand. Pang Xiao reached out and pulled her up with his arm strength. However, he respected etiquette and didn't touch the Empress anywhere else. He couldn't directly carry her up like he did with Qin Yining because he was worried that she would bump into something. The Empress's legs scraped against the rock. It was burning with pain. The Empress was a bit disappointed. She sighed softly. The group of people continued to move forward with difficulty. At this time, Bing Tang and Jian were following Huzi and Tang Xiu to start walking the last section of the steep path. Sun Momo saw Huzi and Tang Xiu and asked for their help. Huzi smiled and said, "Don't be anxious, Sun Momo. Wang Yi arranged for the bodyguards to escort the elders. They will arrive here soon. The two of us have to protect the two older sisters by Wang Fei's side. It's not convenient to bring you along. You can rest here for a while. When the other bodyguard arrive, they will bring Sun Momo up the mountain." Sun Momo had no choice but to nod and continue to wait. At this time, Jing had already reached the top of the mountain. He climbed down again to welcome Qin Yining. "Wang Fei, we are very close to Wanfo Temple. Just go around this section of the road and cross the wooden bridge in front." Qin Yining nodded. He hung his sore legs and put his hands on his waist to catch his breath. "My body is not as good as before. I didn't expect to be so tired before even climbing a mountain. In the past, I ran around the mountain all day, picking herbs and hunting. I often encountered wild beasts. If my body was so weak in the past, I would have been eaten by wolves. Qin Yining wiped his sweat and asked Jing Zhou with a smile, "Later, why don't I wake up early to practice martial arts with you? You can also teach me a thing or two." Jing Zhou smiled and said, "Wang Fei wants to learn martial arts. Isn't there the best master?" Turning around to follow Jing Zhou's gaze, they saw Pang Xiao expressionlessly pulling the red-faced empress up a flight of stairs made of round wood. Pang Xiao had already heard Qin Yining's words. He let go of the empress's hand and gently said to Qin Yining, "If you want to learn, I can teach you at any time." Qin Yining nodded and said, "That's good." The empress panted and clenched her fists, as if she was holding onto the residual warmth of Pang Xiao's hand when he pulled her. Looking up at Pang Xiao, who was gently talking to Qin Yining, the empress couldn't help but think about how Li Qiqian usually treated her. How long had it been since she saw Li Qiqian gently chatting with her? Even serving him in bed on the 1st and 15th of the lunar month was routine. They didn't even chat. She couldn't find common topics to talk about with Li Qiqian now. This was their current life. Li Qiqian was focused on the affairs of the court. If he had any other thoughts, he would be with those young and beautiful concubines. She was the noble empress, but she was just chafing chaff. Unlike Pang Xiao and Qin Yining, their love was not an illusion, but a true love from the bottom of their hearts. The empress felt envious when she looked at them. A sour feeling filled her heart and gradually turned into more obvious jealousy. "Nyang Nyang," a sudden voice pulled the empress back to reality. She looked up blankly and found that Pang Xiao had already jumped up a step and was looking down at her. The person she was jealous of had already climbed up a step. The empress bit her lower lip and reached out her hand to Pang Xiao. The group of people spent a tremendous amount of effort and finally arrived at the top of the mountain. Below their feet was a bridge made of round logs. Not far away on their right was a large stretch of dense forest and mountain range. On their left was a large lake after walking for half an hour. From afar, they could still hear the splashing sound of the waterfall. "So there's a waterfall here?" Qin Yining said in surprise. "Yes, I think the water source on the mountain comes from here," Jing Zhi said with a smile. Qin Yining opened her arms and took a deep breath. She looked happily at the green mountains under the blue sky and the clear lake that looked like a piece of jade. Amidst the fragrance of flowers and trees in the air, one could already smell the faint fragrance of sandalwood. The myriad Buddha temple stood in the middle of this beautiful scenery. A 2-story tall Bodhisattva statue stood in the courtyard of the myriad Buddha temple, next to the tall tower, mercifully looking at the vast mountains and rivers. This trip was really worth it. Yes, Pang Xiao had already walked to Qin Yining's side and wiped her sweat with his sleeve. "Are you tired? How about I carry you over?" The round wooden bridge in front is not easy to walk on. The round wooden bridge was made of 3 thick logs tied together with a thick hemp rope. It was casually placed in the middle of a crack. Although it was only a few steps away, there were no handrails on either side. If she accidentally fell into the crack, she would fall directly into the flowing water at the bottom of the mountain. Qin Yining didn't try to be brave. She smiled and said, "Okay, my legs have been sore for a long time." Pang Xiao chuckled. He didn't carry her on his back. Instead, he carried her horizontally and said, "Look at how thin you are." He walked towards a round wooden bridge step by step and whispered in Qin Yining's ear, "Huzi and Tang Xiu are going to be happy later." Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh when she thought of Huzi's words when he was teasing Bing Tang at the bottom of the mountain. She patted Pang Xiao's shoulder and said, "Why are you so bad?" Pang Xiao laughed loudly. Chapter 994. The Empress pressed her lips together. She was shocked that her heart would throb because of Pang Xiao's hearty laughter. She was already old, but Pang Xiao was just 28 years old. It was the best age for men. Thinking back, when Pang Xiao and Jin Shang became sworn brothers, he was only 14. Every time the tall and thin youth saw her, he would smile and call her Daisa. She was his sister-in-law, Jin Shang's wife, and the birth mother of the only imperial son. How could she be moved by a man who was so many years younger than her? But her heart that had been hardened after being in the palace for so many years did not listen to her wishes. Seeing Pang Xiao carry Qin Yining and steadily cross the bridge, the Empress could not suppress her envy and jealousy. That feeling was too torturous for her, and she despised herself. Pang Xiao sent Qin Yining across the bridge. Jing Zhe and the others also crossed the bridge to protect Qin Yining. Pang Xiao turned back and stood in front of the Empress. He said with a smile, "Nyang Nyang, do you need to rest for a while more?" The Empress dazedly came back to her senses. She used all her willpower to not show any abnormalities. She tried to climb up, but she was so tired she could not stand. Her feet hurt, her legs hurt. She swayed and almost fell. Pang Xiao hurriedly reached out to support her. The Empress grabbed onto Pang Xiao's strong arm to steady herself. But the heat from her hand seemed to be able to burn people. Her heart beat quickly, and she hurriedly pulled back her hand. "Nyang Nyang, are you all right?" "Bin Gong is fine." The Empress' voice was slightly hoarse. Pang Xiao saw that the Empress's hairpin was late, and she looked very distressed. He thought that she was extremely tired, so he said, "Nyang Nyang, hold on a little longer. After crossing this bridge, it will be flat ground. We will reach Fo temple very soon." "All right." Other than nodding, the Empress did not know what else to do. Bringing the Empress across the bridge, Pang Xiao naturally could not carry her across. He walked backwards in front and stretched out an arm as a handrail. The Empress then supported Pang Xiao's arm and moved forward step by step. The guards who came with the Empress followed closely behind to protect them. Soon, they reached the other side of the bridge. Pang Xiao strode back to Qin Yining's side, leaving the Empress behind. He was no longer needed for the rest of the journey. The Empress' expression was solemn, not allowing anyone to see her disappointment. If there were no accidents, this would be his last chance to be so close to Pang Xiao. Looking at Pang Xiao and Qin Yining walking towards Wanfo Temple hand in hand, their backs looked so compatible. The two of them talked and laughed, and the atmosphere was so good. Pang Xiao often looked at Qin Yining with gentle eyes. They were truly an enviable couple. But she shamefully had thoughts about Pang Xiao that she should not have. She was the Empress. She should be the mother of the world, dignified and self-controlled. If she could not be a woman and be peaceful and lonely, what face did she have to be a role model for all the women in the world? What face did she have to restrain others? Now it seemed that her feelings were even more shameful than the relationship between Qin Yining and Lu Heng. The Empress was tormented by self-blame and shame. But that throbbing was not fake. She was not in the mood to appreciate the beautiful scenery along the way. When she followed Pang Xiao and Qin Yining to knock on the door of Wanfo Temple and was led in by the reception monk, the Empress raised her head to look at the two-story Bodhisattva statue. The guilt in her heart could not be hidden under the Bodhisattva's compassionate gaze. She piously put her hands together and bowed. The Empress had come to worship Buddha and pray for the people of Dezhou. How could such a thing be concealed? Pang Xiao immediately went to the reception monk's ear and whispered the identity of their group. The reception monk raised his head in surprise and recited, "Amit Ba." So, his honored guests, please forgive this poor monk for not knowing. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Young master, no need to be so courteous. It is us who have disturbed your temple. It is because the rain has not stopped, and this humble one is very worried. So we have come to your temple to worship Buddha. Honored guests care for the world. It is the fortune of the people. But today the abbot has an old friend who has come to visit. The two have been discussing Buddhism and have not returned yet. It is impolite that the abbot could not personally come to greet us." "Not at all." The Empress came forward with a smile and put her hands together. "Since we have come to worship Buddha, there is no distinction between high and low. Young master, please lead the way for us. Amit Ba, the Empress is benevolent. This poor monk will take the honored guests to the meditation room for the time being." They then followed the reception monk to the side courtyard to settle down. Pang Xiao also informed the reception monk that more people would be coming in later. The reception monk then led the young novice monk to tidy up the entire meditation room in the side courtyard. He also ordered the kitchen to prepare vegetarian food. The Empress had just settled down and went to the main hall. She knelt in front of the Buddha with her hands together. Everyone thought that she was praying for the people, but only she knew that today she had feelings that she should not have. She despised herself and spurned herself in the bottom of her heart. She wanted to seek forgiveness in front of the Buddha. Even if she could not, she wanted to find peace in her heart. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao also changed their clothes in the meditation room. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "How is it? Are you tired?" "I'm a little tired." Rubbing his sore legs and feet, Qin Yining said helplessly, "The mountain road is rugged and difficult. It is beyond imagination. I am really worried when I have to go down the mountain." "What are you afraid of?" "I will carry you." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "I had wanted to take you to walk around and then go to the backyard to see the old trees. Now it seems that you should rest well. Since the Empress is here, we are not in a hurry to go back. It is good to stay here for a few more days." "Yes, I had not thought that the Empress would travel so far to come here to pray. She is very sincere. Admirable." Qin Yining knew that the Empress sincerely hoped that the people of Dezhou could live in peace and contentment. The Empress was also pure and was not an evil person. Even though their positions were different and they would stand on opposite sides sooner or later, Qin Yining admired the Empress very much right now. Pang Xiao smiled and did not continue this topic. He started to talk about other things with Qin Yining. When it was dark, Pang Xiao's entourage finally arrived at the Wanfo Temple one after another. The reception monk didn't dare to be negligent. He ordered the young novice monk to lead them to their accommodations and arranged a vegetarian meal for them. Qin Yining did not see Mu Jinghu in the crowd, but did not ask. When they returned to the meditation room, he asked Pang Xiao in a low voice. Pang Xiao said, "I was worried that something was wrong, so I asked Mu Jinghu to observe in secret. Don't worry. After confirming that nothing was wrong, I let him come back. That's good. As a friend, Mu Gongzi has been loyal enough for us. Every time I trouble him, I feel uneasy." Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Don't worry. My friendship with Mu Jinghu does not need to be so calculative. He is sincere to me. My sincerity in return is the best repayment. There is no need to be so calculative between friends." The friendship between men was naturally different from that between women. Qin Yining knew that Pang Xiao had a sense of propriety and did not nag anymore. After working hard for an entire day, the two went to bed early. Chapter 995. Before dawn, Qin Yining woke up to the sound of the morning bell. Other than the familiar scent of Pang Xiao, there was the ubiquitous sandalwood scent of Wanfo Temple. After getting up, Qin Yining first went to the meditation room, where the Empress resided, to pay her respects. Wang Fei, the Empress, met an old friend of the abbot. That is a high monk. Last night, they discussed Buddhism and didn't return until the third watch. This morning, she went with that high monk to pay respects to Buddha. The Empress knows that Wang Fei is a person of etiquette and will definitely come to pay respects. The Empress has ordered that there will be no mortal etiquette for the next few days. Wang Fei, please do as you wish. Hearing this, Qin Yining couldn't help but sigh. Nyang Yang is truly devoted to the people. Compared to Nyang Yang, Chen Fu is ashamed. Sun Mama smiled and said, "Wang Fei, why do you say this?" Wang Fei is also a person who has accumulated virtue and is very sincere in paying respects to Buddha. The matter of you accompanying Nyang Yang to pay respects to Buddha, Nyang Yang often mentions it. She often praises you for being calm and sincere. Qin Yining knew that the Empress might not praise her, but it was more likely that she was suspicious. However, she still chatted with Sun Mama for a while before returning to the meditation room. At this time, the young novice monk had brought in the vegetarian food. Pang Xiao was waiting in the room and practicing a round of boxing out of boredom. Seeing Qin Yining push open the door and come in, she neatly stopped and smiled. "I was waiting for you. Let's walk around Wanfo Temple today." Qin Yining smiled and nodded. He sat across from Pang Xiao and ate a simple vegetarian meal. Not long after the meal was over, Qin Yining said, "Her Majesty the Empress is really attentive to the people. Granny Sun said that Her Majesty the Empress worshipped Buddha until the third watch of the night last night and left early this morning. This one FO temple seems to have a high monk. Supposedly, he is a good friend of the abbot. Maybe it is because the high monk's teachings are very good that the empress's mind is completely not on the beautiful scenery. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Yesterday, I heard from the reception master that the abbot of the Wanfo temple is an eminent monk. Presumably, birds of a feather flock together. The friend of the eminent monk must also be proficient in Buddhism." Sitting on the Kong bed and sighing, Pang Xiao smiled and said, "It is a pity that I am a bore. I don't know much about Buddhism." Qin Yining smiled. "How are you a bore? Besides, even though you don't come up with a set of Dharma, you still act according to the heart of doing good and never hurt innocent people. But in the end, my hands are stained with blood." Pang Xiao lowered his eyes and looked at his slender hands. His palms were full of calluses, and his fingers were slightly deformed. It was obvious that he was a person who held a weapon all year round. Pang Xiao's lowered head made Qin Yining think of a helpless child. She couldn't help but say softly, "Everyone is born with a different mission. Also, the Buddhist said, if I don't go to hell, who will? Since you have the ability, you have to bear the responsibility. This cannot be blamed on you. Everything is the will of the heavens and fate." Pang Xiao heard Qin Yining's gentle and soft voice and couldn't help but laugh. "I didn't think that, sister. He also believes in the will of the heavens and fate. Sometimes, when you have done your best, you will understand the will of the heavens. There is nothing to not believe in." Pang Xiao stood and stretched her arms. She said with a smile, "The Empress does not need your company. How about we walk around Wanfo temple today and make a wish at the ancient tree?" "Of course." Qin Yining nodded cheerfully. The two did not disturb others and did not ask for company. There were many meditation rooms in Wanfo temple. After going up the mountain yesterday, everyone had scattered to rest. The terrain here was dangerous and the temple was quiet. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining both wanted everyone to be free. She was not someone who needed to be served. The two went out. Because this was a Buddhist temple, they did not hold hands. They walked side by side in the spacious courtyard paved with square bricks. The strong grass stubbornly stretched out from the cracks of the stone bricks, bypassed the tall bodhisattva statue, and met a few young novice monks. The two of them stopped, put their palms together, saluted each other, and then walked in different directions. Walking along the walls of the courtyard, it didn't take long for them to see 3 majestic halls. They passed through the courtyard where the halls were, walked a few hundred steps through the moon door, and came to the back courtyard. The 7-storied pagoda stood silently behind the Bodhi tree and looked down at the vast land from the peak of Jihuang Mountain. The loud sound of water came from behind the pagoda. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao walked one after another in the direction of the sound of water. Soon, they came to a spacious flat area. There were flowers and trees here. An ancient tree that was thick enough for 4 people to wrap their arms around it was split in 2 and fell to the ground. The wood was charred, but there were new shoots growing in the middle of the originally charred trunk. Qin Yining walked forward happily and looked at the new green on the charred trunk. She breathed in the fresh grass fragrance mixed with the smell of sandalwood. Listening to the sound of the waterfall behind her, she felt as if her anxious heart had calmed down in an instant. Under such conditions, the old tree could still produce new shoots. It was full of vitality and made her feel that nothing in the world was impossible. Pang Xiao stood beside Qin Yining. They put their hands together and closed their eyes to pray sincerely. Neither of them said their thoughts. After making the wish, Qin Yining looked up at Pang Xiao and found that Pang Xiao was also looking down at her. She felt that perhaps the contents of their wishes were the same. The two of them turned around and walked slowly to the edge of the cliff. At the bottom of the cliff, there was a rapid flow of water 50 to 60 feet high. The waterfall splashed a large amount of water, and white fog rose from the water like clouds. A drawbridge extended from the bottom of the cliff to the opposite shore. However, standing here, one couldn't see the other side of the drawbridge, nor could they see the scene on the other side. Everything seemed to be hidden in the fog. The drawbridge seemed to extend from the cliff and lead to the other side of the sky. Qin Yining smiled and said, It's no wonder that this place can still become a famous scenic spot for so many people despite its dangerous terrain. The scenery here is really good. The sky is high, the clouds are boundless, and the water is clear. Standing here, it's like standing in the clouds. Yes, Pang Xiao took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. It seems like nothing is going to pass. Qin Yining nodded in agreement. At this moment, she was standing high up and looking down at the misty mountains below her. Her mind seemed to be more open. Sister, look. Pang Xiao pointed to the east. The bright morning glow gradually filled the sky. A red sun slowly climbed up the mountain and drove away the stars. The sunlight shone through the gaps in the clouds and sprinkled on the mountains and rivers. The light from the water and the sky combined to form a dazzling golden-red color. Those who didn't stand here and watch the sunrise wouldn't be able to understand Qin Yining's feelings at this moment. She and Pang Xiao stood side by side silently. The two of them didn't speak and enjoyed this moment of peace. After a long time, Qin Yining heard footsteps behind her. Only then did she turn around. Bing Tang and Jian walked in front holding hands. Huzi and Tang Xiu followed behind. Perhaps they didn't expect Pang Xiao and Qin Yining to be here so early. The four of them were slightly stunned. Bing Tang and Ji Yun's faces were slightly red. It wasn't known if it was due to shyness or because of the morning glow. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining exchanged a look and tacitly didn't speak. Bing Tang smiled and said, "No wonder Wang Fei wasn't in the room. This servant went to look for nothing. So you found such a good place to watch the sunrise." "Yes, it's a pity you came a bit late. The scenery here is very good. Tomorrow, you can come earlier." Ji Yun and Bing Tang smiled and nodded in agreement. Huzi walked to the side of the suspension bridge. Just as she took a curious step, she was pulled back by Bing Tang. "What are you doing? The other side is covered in clouds. We don't know how far it is or what's on the other side. Are you planning on going to the other side?" Based on the speed of the current under their feet, the water here shouldn't be narrow. The fog on the mountain was too thick. They could only see the water, but couldn't see what was on the other side. Huzi chuckled. Okay. If you don't ask me to go, I won't go. I'm just curious." Bing Tang snorted. "If you're curious, you can ask the monks of Wan Fo Temple first. What if the suspension bridge isn't strong?" "I know. I won't do it in the future." Huzi obediently agreed. At the side, Pang Xiao snickered as she watched. Huzi's face immediately turned red. She coughed and looked away. Pang Xiao felt that when she saw Huzi like this, she saw herself trying to get close to Qin Yining. Although it had been 6 years since they met again, and Qin Yining was already in his 20s, the memory of that time was exceptionally clear in her mind. The group of people chatted and laughed as they walked back to the backyard of Wan Fo Temple. As soon as they stepped through the door, they saw Jing Zhe, Liao Zhibing, and Mu Jinghu walking towards them with serious expressions. Qin Yining's expression instantly tensed up. "What happened?" Jing Zhe said, "Princess Consort. Master Zhong asked the brothers of the Qing Tian Alliance to deliver a letter." Liao Zhibing cupped his hands and said, "Alliance Master, Master Zhong sent a letter to you." Qin Yining took the letter and opened it. He casually asked, "Do you know what happened in the south?" Master Zhong had carried out the reclamation of terrace fields in the vicinity of Huichuan County and all of Qin Yining's lands in the south. Qin Yining had originally bought a part of the terraced fields before Dian was conquered. There were already some experienced farmers who could teach others. Master Zhong had gone to the south, and everything was going smoothly. Qin Yining didn't know why a letter would make these three people's expressions so serious. Liao Zhibing said, "Princess Consort, everything else is fine." But the brothers from the south said that the rain in the south has not stopped. The riverbanks are already in high water. In addition, Boss Xiu seems to have contracted some kind of illness. I heard that the illness is not weak. Qin Yining's brows furrowed as he listened. He glanced at Mu Jinghu, who was pursing his lips, and carefully read the contents of the letter. The letter explained in detail the reclamation of the terraced fields by Qin Yining, as well as the operation of the other businesses. It also talked about the rain and the water in the south. Finally, it talked about Xiu Feishan's illness. When Qin Yining and Pang Xiao left, Qiu Feishan had just given birth. After that, she had to work hard on business matters and fight with Qiu Yuanqing. In addition, the south was already humid. This year, the weather was not good. Qiu Feishan was overworked and weak after giving birth. She caught a cold. Later, before she recovered from the cold, she was bitten by mosquitoes and contracted malaria. Qin Yining was shocked when he read it. He didn't care that the contents of the letter involved business secrets and stuffed it to Mu Jinghu. Mu Jinghu's face turned green. Looking at the last paragraph of the letter, his hands began to tremble. Chapter 996. Mu Jinghu nodded and resisted the urge to rush down the mountain. Qin Yining pulled Bing Tang to the side and asked in a low voice, "Is there any problem with malaria?" Bing Tang said with a serious expression, "It's a serious symptom. It's possible that it won't go well, but don't worry, Princess Consort. If it's a knowledgeable doctor, it won't hurt to be more careful." Hearing Bing Tang's words, Qin Yining asked anxiously, "Are you confident?" Bing Tang looked down and thought for a while. "I can't be sure without seeing Boss Qiu. But if you ask me to treat malaria, although I'm not 100% confident, I'm at least 80% confident." Qin Yining nodded and said, "Bing Tang, are you willing to go to the south with Mr. Mu? I know that the south is still flooded and it's very dangerous. If you're not willing, I'm willing." Bing Tang said seriously, "Don't worry, Princess Consort. Boss Qiu is Mr. Mu's wife, and Mr. Mu is Wang Ye's close friend. They're all on our side. Moreover, I can't leave them in the lurch." Qin Yining sighed in relief and said gratefully, "No matter what the result is, I have to thank you on behalf of Boss Qiu." "What are you saying, Princess Consort?" Bing Tang blushed in embarrassment. Pang Xiao and Mu Jinghu heard the two of them talking in a low voice. Seeing Bing Tang nod, Mu Jinghu quickly strode over. "I know some basic medical skills, too. I can be your assistant. As for safety, Miss Bing Tang, you don't have to worry." Bing Tang laughed heartily. "Of course. With Mr. Mu around, there's no need to worry about safety." Pang Xiao saw the reluctance on Huzi's face from the corner of her eye. She thought for a while and said, "Huzi, go with Mr. Mu. It'll be easier for us to contact each other if anything happens." Huzi was stunned. He hesitated and said, "Wang Yi." Pang Xiao knew that he was worried about the lack of manpower around him. Although they seemed to be safe at the moment, no one could say for sure what kind of accident would happen during the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum. Pang Xiao comforted her. "Don't worry, just go with young Master Mu. Let me know if anything happens." Huzi knew that Pang Xiao was being considerate of him, so he bowed to Pang Xiao gratefully. "Yes, thank you, Wang Yi." After the plan was set, Qin Yining and Ji Yun went to help Bing Tang pack their luggage. Bing Tang stuffed a lot of bottles and jars, big and small paper bags, and prescriptions into Yun's hands. She told her what to treat, what to eat for cold, what to use for headaches, and even left 2 big bottles of itching medicine. Ji Yun was carefully noted down. "Don't worry, I will keep these well. I will use them when I need them." Only then did Bing Tang nod. Mu Jinghu and Huzi had already packed everything. When Bing Tang went out with a bag, the 3 of them immediately went down the mountain. Qin Yining looked at the group of people's backs with a solemn expression and said worriedly, "I hope Boss Qiu can be safe. Young Master Mu threw his family's business to Boss Qiu for our sake. Brother Yin is still so young. He didn't take care of him. It's hard to find a friend like young Master Mu in this world. If young Master Mu neglects Boss Qiu because he wants to help us, and if anything happens to Boss Qiu, I will feel uneasy for the rest of my life." Pang Xiao also nodded. His mood was even heavier than Qin Yining's. As a man, he could understand this kind of anxiety. Just like when Qin Yining went missing and his life was unknown, his sky was about to fall. Mu Jinghu's feelings for Qiu Feishan were no less than his feelings for Qin Yining. The two of them returned to the meditation room in silence. They originally came here to sightsee, but after the incident with Qiu Feishan, no matter how carefree they were, they would lose their interest in the scenery. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao had the intention to return. However, They met the Empress, and the Empress only had son Momo and a guard by her side now. Pang Xiao couldn't just leave them alone at this time. I think the Empress's people will be here soon. The guards and palace servants are also afraid that if something happens to the Empress, they won't be able to report back. But even if the Empress's people are here, we can't leave easily. The two of them looked at each other helplessly. Qin Yining said, "Since we are here, let's take things as they come. Since we can't go back, let's stay here temporarily." Although the Empress has to worship Buddha, the Empress Dowager's birthday is coming soon. We have to leave some time for the journey. At most, we can stay here for 10 days. Moreover, we have to give Zhongyibo some time. Pang Xiao pinched Qin Yining's face. "I know. I'm happy to stay here with you. If we can live in seclusion in a place like this for the rest of our lives, we won't have to worry about the troubles of the outside world. That would be the greatest fortune." Although they couldn't completely ignore the outside world, it was also a good thing to be able to relax for a short time. After calming down, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao went to visit all the beautiful places on the mountain. The Empress was busy worshipping Buddha with that enlightened monk all day. Qin Yining didn't see her when he went to pay his respects every day. Son Momo was also helpless. Nyang Nyang is talking about Buddha with that monk in the Guanyin Hall and sincerely praying for blessings. She only sleeps for 6 hours a day and spends the rest of her time in the Guanyin Hall. Qin Yining said worriedly, "Nyang Nyang prays for the people of the world like this. It's really moving. But Nyang Nyang has the Phoenix Constitution and should be careful." Wang Fei is right. This servant has tried to persuade Nyang Nyang, but Nyang Nyang won't listen to this servant. Now, even Nyang Nyang only eats 1 meal a day. Sometimes she even sleeps in the Guanyin Hall. Son Momo shook her head. It seems that the monk is really an expert. His teachings are really good. Otherwise, Nyang Nyang wouldn't be so engrossed. It wasn't a bad thing that Nyang Nyang Empress was so engrossed in Buddha. Qin Yining went to the meditation room every day as usual. He would miss her every time, but he still had to be polite. 2 days passed like this. Qin Yining woke up in the morning and ate his vegetarian meal. Just as he was about to go pay his respects to the Empress, he suddenly heard a rush of footsteps outside. Then the door to the meditation room was pushed open. Not good. Not good. Son Momo pulled a young novice monk in a panic, her eyes full of terror. Qin Yining's brows slightly furrowed. "What's wrong with Son Momo? You're so panicked." Pang Xiao also stood up and came over to ask. Son Momo fell to the ground with a thump. She covered her mouth in terror, afraid that she would cry too loudly. She forced herself to keep her voice down and raised her head. With tears streaming down her face, she said in a low voice, "The Empress is missing." Qin Yining and Pang Xiao heard this and couldn't help but gasp. How could the Empress be missing? Pang Xiao's brows were tightly furrowed. His phoenix eyes narrowed, his gaze cold. Son Momo's entire body trembled. She pointed at the young novice monk who was standing to the side in a daze with a forehead full of cold sweat. He said it. "The Empress has been spending the night in Guanyin Hall these past few days." Wang Fei also knows. The daily vegetarian meal is delivered by this young novice monk, and the tableware is returned the next day. But when this young novice monk went to Guanyin Hall today, he didn't see Nyang Nyang Empress inside. It was empty. Pang Xiao's face darkened. He looked coldly at the young novice monk. What happened? The young novice monk trembled, his entire body trembling in fear. Ba, this little monk also doesn't know. When this little monk goes to deliver the vegetarian meal, I always open the door, put down the food box, inform Nyang Nyang Empress, and then leave. Nyang Nyang Empress is gentle and always answers this little monk. But when I went to deliver the vegetarian meal this morning, no one answered. This little monk was worried and searched inside the hall, but found that Nyang Nyang Empress wasn't there. Pang Xiao lowered his eyes to look at Son Momo and then at the young novice monk. "You too. Don't make this matter public for now. Perhaps Nyang Nyang Empress is tired and is walking around. It's unknown if she didn't tell you. Now go and search around. Be careful, don't alert anyone, and don't tell anyone that the Empress is missing. Otherwise, how many heads do you have to chop off?" Pang Xiao's words reminded Son Momo and the young novice monk. The two suddenly realized their mistake and nodded repeatedly at this time. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining led them out of the meditation room. They called for Ji Yun, Jing Zhe, and Tang Xiu to first quietly go to Guanyin Hall to investigate. Qin Yining pursed his lips. Originally, he thought that the terrain on the mountain was dangerous and no outsiders would come up. He thought that the Empress would be worshipping Buddha all day, so there wouldn't be any trouble. Therefore, he didn't arrange for people to follow and guard. After all, the Empress was the mother of the country. If they, as officials, meddled too much, the Empress would be disgusted. But it was because of this reassurance that there was trouble today. He could only hope that the Empress really went out for a stroll. If there was an accident, wouldn't everyone be buried with the Empress? Wang Yi. Tang Xiu found a note under a praying mat in the corner. Pang Xiao strode over and picked up the note. There was only one short sentence on it. If you want to find the Empress, please ask Prince Zhongshuan to come to Karma Peak alone. Qin Yining stood beside Pang Xiao and also clearly saw the contents of the note. He was so shocked that his palms were sweating. The other party was actually targeting Pang Xiao. The Empress was the crown prince. In order to deal with Pang Xiao, the other party dared to kidnap the current crown prince. Qin Yining immediately thought of that senior monk. Wang Yi quickly asked the abbot. Pang Xiao clearly also thought of this. He immediately ordered the little novice monk behind him. Go secretly and ask the abbot to come here. Remember, do not speak of this matter. Otherwise, no one will be able to live. The little novice monk's face was pale with fright. He quickly nodded and turned to go find the abbot in a panic. Pang Xiao read the note again and said in a deep voice, Karma Peak is on the other side of the suspension bridge. It is said that it is the forbidden area of the temple. The fog has been heavy these past few days. Because it is a forbidden area and only half of the suspension bridge is exposed, I did not go to investigate. I didn't think that the Empress would be taken there. Qin Yining had already thought of many possibilities. She asked Sun Mama, when was the last time you saw Nyang Yang? Sun Mama said in a panic, Wang Fei, you suspect that Nyang Yang disappeared a long time ago? Qin Yining did not respond and only silently looked at Sun Mama. Sun Mama immediately recalled and said with certainty, it was the morning of the day before yesterday. Chapter 997. No, your guess is very likely. Pang Xiao rubbed his eyebrows regretfully and said tiredly, it's my negligence. I just thought that there were no outsiders on the mountain, and I never suspected the monks of the Wanfo Temple. I didn't expect that something would happen to the Empress in such an environment. This is not your fault. I also didn't think that something would happen on such a dangerous mountain. Qin Yining looked around and carefully searched for clues in the hall. Soon, footsteps came from outside the hall. Pang Xiao looked at the door with a sharp gaze. He saw a novice monk lead in an old monk with a long beard and a kind face over 60 years of age. Pang Xiao had been on the battlefield for many years, so when he was serious, he had an awe-inspiring aura. Ordinary people would feel a sense of urgency and fear under his gaze. The old monk was an outsider, but he felt the same, especially when someone as noble as the Empress was missing. This humble monk, Xianyun, greets Wang Yi. Xianyun put his palms together and bowed slightly. Pang Xiao returned the bow and said in a low voice, Abbot Xianyun should already know the specifics of the situation. This humble monk already knows. This matter is of great importance. Her Majesty the Empress worships Buddha, but something happened to her in your temple. If this spreads, your Majesty will be furious, and everyone in your temple will lose their lives. Therefore, this king's intention is to not publicize it and search for her in private first. Cold sweat appeared on Xianyun's forehead, but he still calmed down and chanted, Amit Ba. This humble monk thanks Wang Yi for his magnanimity. If Pang Xiao wanted to clear his name, he could have captured all the monks of Thousand Buddha Temple right now, put a crime on them, and wait for the emperor to deal with them. This way, he wouldn't have to bear the consequences at all. If he wanted to completely clear his name, he could put other crimes on them. But Pang Xiao didn't do that and found him alone. Xianyun was grateful, and his attitude became more respectful. Pang Xiao saw that Xianyan understood and said, I heard that Abbot Yun's best friend is a high monk. Her Majesty the Empress has learned a lot from that high monk these days. Where's that high monk now? Xianyan said calmly. Wang Yi, the one who preached with Her Majesty, is actually a nun. Her Buddhist name is Tong Yuan. This humble monk met her more than 10 years ago and hasn't seen her for many years. She wandered here and has been a guest in the temple. She is proficient in Buddhism and has a reliable character. Indeed, she is a high monk. But the day before yesterday, she said goodbye to this humble monk and went down the mountain. No one would have thought that the senior monk was actually a nun. Everyone in the hall fell silent. However, Pang Xiao and Qin Yining caught the last sentence. Qin Yining asked, Abbot Yun, do you mean that Abbess Tong Yuan has already left the mountain the day before yesterday afternoon? Yes. Abbot Xianyan nodded. Qin Yining looked at Pang Xiao and said faintly, It seems that I guessed correctly. Pang Xiao nodded. Even though there is no evidence, but it's not far from the truth. Abbot Xianyan, please secretly investigate if any of the monks in the temple have disappeared or if anyone is acting strangely. We can't be sure exactly when Her Majesty the Empress disappeared. Sun Momo said that yesterday, the Empress stayed in Guanyin Hall and did not return to her meditation room. The young novice monk only found that she was missing when he went to deliver the vegetarian meal this morning. So it is very likely that the Empress disappeared the day before yesterday. If the monks in your temple are not acting strangely, then it is enough to prove that the nun who left the day before yesterday was the one who kidnapped the Empress. That is why she ran away in such a hurry. Pang Xiao showed the note he found under the praying mat to Abbot Xianyan. Even though Karma Peak is your temple's forbidden area, but for the Empress, we can't avoid offending it. Reading the contents of the note, Abbot Xianyan's expression became uglier. He understood Pang Xiao's meaning. If the other monks in the temple were not acting strangely, then it meant that Nun Tong Yuan had really deceived him and used his relationship to wait here and harm the Empress. To think that a monk would be so vicious. If not for the benevolent and magnanimous Prince Zhongshuan, all the monks in the temple would have been buried with Nun Tong Yuan's actions. Wang Yi, please do as you wish. Actually, that forbidden area is not really a forbidden area. It is just a place for seclusion to worship Buddha. The mountain opposite is even steeper. There are cliffs everywhere at the foot of the mountain. Only the top of the mountain has vegetation, and there's also a natural cave and water source. When our temple was first built, we built a suspension bridge so that it would be convenient for us to go to the other side to meditate and cultivate Buddhism when we are in seclusion. But the fog is really thick these days. We can't see the situation on the other side clearly. I see, Pang Xiao said. More than half of the suspension bridge has been submerged in the fog. This king indeed did not notice the situation on the other side. Moreover, when he heard that the other side is a forbidden area of your temple, he did not have any curiosity. Qin Yining's brows were tightly furrowed. He asked Abbot Xianyan at the right time, Abbot, is there really no other way to go up the Karma Peak on the other side, and we can only go through the suspension bridge? Qin Yining was worried that there would be an ambush on the other side. Abbot Xianyan said, Amit Ba, monks do not lie. There is indeed no way to go up or down the Karma Peak, because the terrain is too steep. The only way is that suspension bridge. Qin Yining nodded. Thank you for telling me, Abbot. If we can find the Empress, we will also have the credit of Abbot and Wanfo Temple. Abbot Xianyan shook his head. We don't ask for credit. We just ask for no mistakes. Pang Xiao told Abbot Xianyan in a low voice that on one hand, he had to check on the monks. On the other hand, he had to secretly arrange for people to search around, to see if the Empress could have been hidden. At the same time, Pang Xiao also asked Tang Xiu to lead people to search along the way down the mountain, in case the Empress was taken away. He wanted to see if they could find any clues. In less than 2 hours, Abbot Xianyan and Tang Xiu both brought back news. None of the monks were lost, and they did not find anything suspicious on the way down. So the Empress was really taken to the Karma Peak on the other side by that Abbot Tong Yuan. This is really outrageous. That Abbot Tong Yuan is a monk after all. How could she do such a thing? Qin Yining's face was full of anger. She clearly did not care about the safety of everyone in Wanfo Temple. It is my humble monk who did not know her well. Abbot Xianyan closed his eyes, put his palms together, and sighed. Pang Zhao's expression was dark. He was slightly worried about the situation on the other side of the mountain. Even though he had immediately arranged for Jinghu Wei to guard the way up and down the mountain. But he had learned his lesson. There were so many monks in Wanfo Temple. He did not know if one or two of them had evil intentions. Previously, he had trusted these monks too much, which was why he had lost the Empress. If he were to go to Karma Peak now, he didn't know if there would be any danger here, and he didn't know if his sister would be hurt. Qin Yining saw Pang Zhao's silence and guessed his inner conflict. He moved closer to Pang Zhao and said in a low voice, "Zhishi, the situation is urgent now. You should order people to go take a look. If something happens to the Empress, not just the monks of Wanfo Temple, even we will not be able to survive." But the other side requested for me to go alone. If I send people, I'm afraid the Empress will be in danger. Pang Zhao said in a low voice, "I am not afraid of danger. I am worried about you. If I leave, if something happens to you here." He was truly frightened by Qin Yining's repeated incidents. With such a situation suddenly occurring, the first thing he thought of was who was luring the tiger away from the mountain and trying to harm his wife. Qin Yining understood. Knowing that Pang Zhao was thinking of her, his heart felt warm. "You are worried about me staying here. How can I not be worried about you? That suspension bridge looks very dangerous. There is rushing water below, and it is so close to the waterfall. If you fall, you will be swept down the waterfall in time. I'm also worried about you going to the Karma Peak alone." The two looked at each other in silence. Pang Zhao shook his head. "I still have to go. Something had happened to the mother of the country. If he could not choose between saving the Empress and protecting his wife, he would definitely be impeached. He might even be accused of being the main culprit behind the Empress's kidnapping. How could Qin Yining not understand this principle? All right, I will go with you." "No," Pang Zhao rejected. "If something really happens, it will be inconvenient to bring you along. You just have to wait for me here. If only Prince Mu was here. If he went with you, there would be an additional layer of protection. The other side of the suspension bridge is filled with fog right now, and we can't see anything clearly. These past few days, we haven't even seen the outline of the Karma Peak on the other side. I am really worried that someone has already done something." Pang Zhao also sighed. All of this is too much of a coincidence. He leaned close to Qin Yining's ear and said in a low voice, "I suspect that this was premeditated long ago, including the Empress coming here, including us coming here, including Blockhead leaving midway, and including the fog on the Karma Peak. All of it was included." "You feel the same?" Qin Yining said, "We thought of the same thing. Who else in the world has this kind of ability?" Apart from Tianjizi, Qin Yining could not think of anyone else. But why did Tianjizi do this? Her actions clearly showed that she supported Pang Zhao. She schemed to harm others and could kill anyone, including Pang Zhao's wife and family. But she never had the intention to kill Pang Zhao. Why would someone who wholeheartedly wanted Pang Zhao, the Emperor's Star of Ziwei, to return to his rightful position, deliberately kidnap the Empress to the Karma Peak and force Pang Zhao to go alone to save her? Qin Yining could not figure out no matter how much he thought about it. But since he guessed that the other party was Tianjizi, Qin Yining could at least be sure that Pang Zhao's safety would not be threatened for the time being. As for other traps, she could only take it one step at a time. Thinking about it now, it was time for Pang Zhao to decide whether to go or not. Even after discussing it with Xie Yu and Su Weiji, the conclusion would still be for Pang Zhao to go. Pang Zhao wiped his face and said helplessly and irritably, "There's no rush. Since we don't know exactly when she went to the Karma Peak, then there's no rush. Let's discuss it clearly with Sir Xie and Sir Su, and I'll make some arrangements. It won't be too late for me to go then." When Qin Yining heard this, he also felt that these words made sense. If something had happened to the Empress, she wouldn't have been taken to the Karma Peak on the other side of the suspension bridge. Wouldn't it have been better to just retreat down the mountain and let her be washed down the waterfall? Chapter 998. Pang Xiao went to find Xie Yu and Su Weiji to discuss in a low voice. Just as Qin Yining and Pang Xiao had thought, even the experienced Xie Yu and the intelligent Su Weiji could not think of a better way than to let Pang Xiao go. They could let other people go, but they were afraid that it would alarm the people who had kidnapped the Empress. If something happened to the Empress, wouldn't it give Li Qiqian an excuse to do whatever he wanted? Everyone came to the drawbridge in the backyard. The sound of the water was rapid, and the fog had not dissipated. It seemed to be getting thicker. Standing by the drawbridge, the rapid water under their feet seemed to be the most powerful obstacle. Seeing the water flow by and hearing the sound of the waterfall, it was hard not to imagine what would happen if they stepped on the drawbridge and lost their balance and fell. Moreover, from Qin Yining and Pang Xiao's angle, they could not see the situation on the other side. Half of the drawbridge was hidden in the fog. Facing the unknown, Qin Yining's heart was in his mouth. Abbot Xianyan said, "The drawbridge is not very long. The water here is rapid because the two sides are narrow. If you walk on the drawbridge, you can reach the other side in about 20 steps. Therefore, the Empress couldn't cross a bridge that wasn't that wide. Or was the Empress trapped? Or was she already?" Pang Xiao pulled Qin Yining's hand with a serious expression and gently squeezed her fingers. "Don't worry, I will be back soon." Qin Yining bit his lower lip and leaned close to Pang Xiao's ear to whisper, "There are no outsiders here now. Even if there are people guarding the Empress, they can't see how many people we have through the fog. The sound of the water and the waterfall is so loud that they can't hear what we are saying. Why don't you take a few more people with you so that we can look after each other? There is no need to take as many people as the other side asks you to." Pang Xiao smiled and also lowered his voice. "We can't be sure if there are other people around. I'm afraid that if we don't follow the request on the note, they will hurt the Empress in a way we can't think of. If something happens to the Empress, the consequences will be unimaginable." Seeing Qin Yining frowning, Pang Xiao comforted him. "Don't worry, I'm confident. Besides, I'm used to fighting on the battlefield. Now that there's no war to fight, I'm itching to fight. Now that there's a way to loosen my muscles and bones, I'll just treat it as having some fun." As he spoke, he patted Qin Yining's shoulder and strode onto the suspension bridge. Qin Yining furrowed her brows and chased after her for a few steps. A gust of wind blew over, causing the corners of her crescent-white dress to flutter. It clung to her body and outlined her exquisite curves. Her long hair that was tied up high also fluttered in the wind, and the corners of her robe fluttered. Every step she took was very firm. However, as soon as someone stepped on the suspension bridge, the wooden boards above made creaking sounds as if they couldn't bear the weight. Then, the bridge swayed due to the sudden gust of wind, as if it would overturn and throw people off at any time. However, Pang Xiao's footsteps didn't hesitate at all. He still walked very steadily. He was tall and had long legs. Soon, he walked into the fog, and his figure gradually disappeared. The suspension bridge near Qin Yining had gradually stopped swaying. Qin Yining raised his voice in worry. "Zhishi, what's the situation on the other side?" Because he knew that the other side was only 20 to 30 steps away, Qin Yining raised his voice as much as possible. Unexpectedly, just as Qin Yining and the others were waiting for Pang Xiao's answer, the rope on the suspension bridge suddenly made a crack sound. The thick rope seemed to have been maliciously pinched by a giant and wantonly snapped on both sides. It was pulled taut bit by bit, and then the small strands of rope were pulled apart bit by bit. In the end, there was only a thread left. Qin Yining was so scared that his soul almost left his body. He screamed, "Zhishi, the rope is broken. Run quickly." Just as he finished speaking, the last thread of rope on both sides of the suspension bridge broke. The entire suspension bridge lost its support. Near Qin Yining's feet, the suspension bridge fell powerlessly. Some wooden boards fell into the water and were washed away in the blink of an eye. The dangling rope quickly disappeared into the fog. Only the sound of the suspension bridge hitting the mountain wall could be heard. "Zhishi, are you all right? Can you hear me?" Once the suspension bridge was destroyed, there was a cliff under their feet. Qin Yining wanted to get closer, But Ji Yun grabbed his arm. Wang Fei, calm down. Wang, you will be fine. Qin Yining's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He threw himself at the edge of the cliff, completely ignoring the people behind him. Jishi. Qin Yining's voice echoed in the mountain, but the sound of the water easily drowned out her voice. Qin Yining's face was pale, and his entire body was trembling. She watched as Pang Xiao stepped onto the suspension bridge. After walking for a while, the suspension bridge began to collapse in front of her eyes. She was completely helpless. This feeling was simply as if someone had dug out her heart. That kind of helplessness and despair was simply heart-wrenching. Tears surged out, and her heart was beating like a drum. If not for Ji Yun holding Qin Yining tightly, she was afraid that she would have directly fallen off the cliff. Wang Fei, calm down, listen, Ji Yun said anxiously. How could Qin Yining hear that? She could only hear her own heartbeat. Even Ji Yun's voice seemed to be very far away from her. Wang Fei, it's Wang Ye's voice. It's true. Quickly listen carefully. Jingzhe also grabbed Qin Yining's arm from the other side. I'm not lying to you. Quickly listen to it. Qin Yining was forcefully pulled back to reality. Gradually, she could hear the voices of the people around her. Then, in the fierce sound of the water, she seemed to vaguely hear Pang Xiao's voice. However, the sound of the water was too loud, and Qin Yining could not hear what Pang Xiao was saying. Is it really Wang Ye's voice? Qin Yining was afraid that she was hallucinating. Su Weiji said, Wang Fei, this old man also heard it. That is indeed Wang Ye's voice. Wang Fei, calm down. Say you came forward to persuade her. Wang Ye's voice seems to be fine. With Wang Ye's skills, if the suspension bridge is really as long as Abbot Xianyan said, then Wang, you should have been able to jump to the other side of the bridge. It's just that the sound of the water is too fast, so it drowned out Wang Ye's voice. However, we can now conclude that Wang Yi is safe. Qin Yining gradually calmed down, and her mind gradually cleared up. At this moment, she realized that she was already sweating profusely, and her face was covered in tears. If Ji Yun and Jingzhe had not held her back, she would have been in danger. She had really been scared senseless when she saw the suspension bridge break. I'm fine. Qin Yining stood up. Her legs were still a little weak. Ji Yun and Jingzhe hurriedly supported her as they retreated. Abbot Xianyan chanted Buddha's name and comforted her. Wang Fei, don't worry. This humble monk does not lie. That suspension bridge is not as long as it looks. Wang Ye's voice has also been heard, so he should be fine. But the suspension bridge is broken, and there is no way down from Karma Peak. How is Wang Yi going to come back? Abbot Xianyan was momentarily speechless. This suspension bridge was built by an eminent monk of our temple more than 100 years ago. Even I don't know how they tied the two sides of the bridge with ropes and built the suspension bridge when there was no way up the mountain from Karma Peak. Qin Yining turned to look at the other side. The mountain was still shrouded in thick fog. Without the suspension bridge, it was as if the entire Karma Peak did not exist. Su Weiji said, Wang Fei, don't worry. Let's think of a way to fix the suspension bridge. Wang Yi will definitely be fine. Abbot Xianyan also said there are wild fruits on the other side, and there is also sufficient water. The mountaintop is large, and the vegetation is lush. Furthermore, there is a natural cave that can provide shelter from the wind and rain. The senior monks who went into seclusion on Karma Peak in the past lived there for 3 to 5 years without any problems. Wang Fei, don't worry. Wang, you'll be fine. Qin Yining shook her head. Abbot also said that it was a senior monk who went into seclusion in the past. The situation now is naturally different from that time. Don't forget, the Empress was kidnapped there, and Wang Yu was also tricked there. No one can be sure what kind of ambush there is on the other side. Qin Yining's words made everyone lower their heads. She really regretted letting Pang Xiao go to save the Empress. She clearly knew that the person behind this was most likely Tianjizi. She also clearly knew that Tianjizi had always been eccentric and unpredictable. How could she agree to let Pang Xiao go to Karma Peak? Qin Yining really did not know what to do in the current situation. Wang Fei. At this moment, Xiao Shui quickly walked in front of Qin Yining. She lowered her voice and said, Wang Fei, the Empress's 5 bodyguards and 4 palace maids have just arrived at the mountain gate. Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. The Empress was kidnapped and disappeared here. Pang Xiao was also tricked into going to Karma Peak. If the people around the Empress knew about this, they would definitely pass it on to Li Qitian. If Li Qitian knew that they had lost the Empress, he would immediately have an excuse to punish Pang Xiao. Moreover, Pang Xiao might even be trapped on Karma Peak with the Empress. If this news spread, who knew what kind of rumors would spread by ignorant people? Whether it is for our safety, for the safety of all the monks in Wanfo Temple, or for the reputation of Wang Yi and the Empress, this matter must be concealed, Qin Yining said in a low voice. Sun Mama's voice trembled. Wang Fei, how long must we conceal this? Qin Yining looked at Sun Mama, his eyes firm and cold. If Sun Mama wants to lose her life immediately, you can announce it. If Granny Sun still wanted to live, she would have to keep this matter a secret until the suspension bridge is repaired and the Empress and Wang Yi are brought here. But if there's a chance, no matter if you say it now or in the future, none of US can escape death. Qin Yining leaned closer to Sun Mama and said, Sun Mama is a smart person. You should know what to do. If Sun Mama is willing to cooperate, all of us still have a chance to live. Otherwise, if this matter spreads back to the capital, I'm afraid that everyone on Juhuang Mountain will become ghosts under the sword. Everyone present knew about this matter. Everyone shivered when they heard this. They were not the only ones on the mountain who knew about this matter. Most of the monks on the mountain followed the rules and did not know what had happened. If the matter was exposed, wouldn't it be too innocent for them to be buried with the Empress? Chapter 999. I know Mama is a smart person. Qin Yining inwardly released a breath. If Mama Sun wasn't willing to cooperate, she really couldn't think of a good solution at the moment. All right, Mama Sun, go arrange the accommodations for the people around the Empress. If they ask about the Empress, just say that the Empress and the enlightened divine nun are in seclusion in the side hall of Guanyin Hall to pray for blessings. They won't come out of seclusion until the 2018th day. No one is allowed to disturb them during this time. If they are disturbed, all their previous efforts will be wasted and there will be no benefit to the people of the country. Mama Sun nodded and asked hesitantly, Wang Fei, this suspension bridge may not be fixed in 18 days. Why didn't she say a few more days for seclusion? Qin Yining shook her head. The Empress Dowager's birthday is coming. Today is the 2nd of the 7th month. The journey from Huichuan to Jing is also included. Delaying it for 18 days is the limit. If it is delayed for too long, it will delay the Empress from returning to Jing to celebrate the Empress Dowager's birthday. Wouldn't it be suspicious? Mama Sun suddenly understood. Wang Fei is very thoughtful. Don't worry, Nubi will go and persuade them. Then I'll trouble Mama. Qin Yining bowed sincerely. Mama Sun didn't dare to accept it and hurriedly moved to the side to avoid it. She bowed deeply and said, Wang Fei is doing a good deed and saving Nubi's life. Nubi is doing this for herself and can't accept Nyang's courtesy. Nu Shizhu is doing this for the monks of the temple. Abbot Xian Yun sighed and said, On behalf of the monks of the temple, this humble monk thanks Nu Shizhu for her righteousness. Mama Sun hurriedly put her hands together to return the greeting. She despised herself for offending others purely for her own sake. But when she thought about how this could save many people from punishment, she felt more confident in her actions. Even if something happened to the Empress in the end, she could go down to accompany the Empress. It could be said that she had done her best for the innocent monks on the mountain. Mama Sun quickly walked toward the mountain gate. Qin Yining then instructed Abbot Xian Yun to restrain all the monks in the temple. He then discussed with Xie Yu and Su Weiji, and finally decided to invite experienced craftsmen from the foot of the mountain to repair the bridge. After 3 days, the Jinghu Wei had indeed quietly brought up a few experienced craftsmen from the foot of the mountain. With the Jinghu Wei around, they had sufficient manpower and it would not be difficult for them to work. However, the only obstacle was the thick fog in front of them. The fog did not disperse, and the work was indeed difficult. As for the Empress's bodyguards, they had become impatient after 3 days. Every day, they would guard outside the Guanyin Hall in shifts. Because the meditation room was inside the Guanyin Hall, and the monks would enter and leave the Guanyin Hall every day, the guards could not guard directly outside the Empress's door. They could not see her, and only saw that the vegetarian meals that the young novice monks delivered each day were eaten. When night fell, they could see the Empress' shadow reflected on the window from the brightly lit meditation room. However, this was not enough to calm their hearts. In the morning, the young novice monk came to deliver the vegetarian meals again. The leader of the guards, He Bin, was about to let him pass when a hand reached out from beside him. "Wait!" He Bin turned his head and saw that the one speaking was Xing Baoshan, who had a reputation among the guards. Xing Baoshan had followed the Empress' orders and had not come up the mountain. He had come up later with the other guards and palace servants. He Bin's expression was tense. That day, he and Mama Sun had escorted the Empress up the mountain. He had not thought that something like this would happen. He had no other choice but to place his hopes on the Prince Zhongshuan's consort. Right now, he had to conceal this matter. "Baoshan, what are you doing?" Xing Baoshan smiled. "Brother He, you and I have not seen the Empress for many days. Why don't we pay our respects to the Empress while this young master is delivering the vegetarian meals? This way we could be at ease." The young novice monk was responsible for delivering the vegetarian meals to the Empress every day. Naturally, he knew that the Empress was not inside and that the Wang Fei had found someone to impersonate her. He felt very guilty and did not dare to show any abnormalities. He only lowered his head and did not make a sound. He Bin said, "What you say is reasonable. However, the Empress has ordered that the matter of seclusion to pray for blessings is important. If it is interrupted, I'm afraid it will be for naught. The Empress prayers in Huichuan County have been very effective. Right now, there are still floods in many places in Dezhou. If the Empress' important matters are ruined because of us, I'm afraid we can't afford to take the blame." Hearing this, Xing Baoshan hesitated. He Bin continued, "We've been guarding the mountain this entire time. The Prince Zhongshuan's family is also here. There should be no problem coming up the mountain. Also, we've been guarding this place every day. We know how many flies and mosquitoes have flown by. The Empress has been staying in the hall this entire time, so there should be no problem. Let's not rashly disturb her." The young novice monk inwardly released a breath and was about to carry the food box in the direction of the meditation room in the hall. Xing Baoshan thought for a moment and then followed with the brothers that had come up the mountain. As he walked, he said, "Brother He's words are reasonable. However, we've only taken a look at the Empress. We'll kowtow and come out. There shouldn't be any problem." He Bin's heart jumped and he hurriedly strode after them. He wanted to say something to stop them, but was worried that he would expose himself. Xing Baoshan walked quickly with his brothers and caught up with the young novice monk in 2 steps. The young novice monk's heart jumped, and he almost dropped the food box in his hands in panic. Sun Mama was standing in front of the meditation room in the side hall. Seeing the young novice monk come with a long tail behind him, her heart jumped. However, she was someone who had been in the palace for a long time and was able to keep her composure. Sun Mama carried the identity of the Empress's most capable servant and asked expressionlessly, "Why have you come?" Xing Baoshan and the guards respectfully bowed. "Greetings to Sun Mama. We were worried about the Empress and wanted to pay our respects." Sun Mama raised her chin and looked at the people in front of her. She took the food box from the young novice monk's hands and lightly said, "The Empress has given orders. Cultivating in seclusion and praying for the people is an important matter that concerns the lives of the people. No one is to disturb her. Everyone's loyalty is commendable. This servant will pass on the message." Sun Mama turned around and was about to enter. Xing Baoshan's expression was serious. He stepped forward and passed by Sun Mama and loudly said, "Empress, Subject Xing Baoshan requests an audience." Sun Mama's expression changed greatly and anxiously said in a low voice, "Bodyguard Xing, please don't be impulsive. If you disturb the Empress prayer, can you bear the responsibility?" Xing Baoshan saw the change in Sun Mama's expression and anxiousness. He couldn't help but be suspicious and said in a low voice, "If anything happens to the Empress, I can't bear the responsibility either. It's not just me. No one on Juhuang Mountain can bear the responsibility. Sun Mama should follow the imperial edict and do things. However, this subject is persisting in his duties, so it can't be considered a great sin." After he finished speaking, he strode forward and pushed the door open. Sun Mama's back was covered in cold sweat. She didn't dare to expose herself, but she was also afraid that someone would break in and find that the Empress wasn't there. In a moment of desperation, she spread her arms and blocked the door. She scolded in a low voice, "This servant follows the Empress and must strictly follow her orders. The Empress prays for the people and meditates in Buddhism. She has already clearly stated that no one is to disturb her, yet you insist on breaking in and disturbing the Empress. What are your intentions? Aren't you afraid that you'll affect the prayer and cause the rain to continue into Zhou?" With such a heavy accusation, Xing Baoshan was so angry that the fire in his heart burned. "Sun Mama, what are you doing? We're just thinking about the Empress' safety. We only want to kowtow to the Empress and make sure she's safe. Then we'll leave. Why is Sun Mama so nervous? Could it be that you've harmed the Empress?" Sun Mama glared to hide her guilty conscience. At this time, Qin Yining, Ji Yun, Jing Zhe, and the other three hurriedly rushed to the front of the courtyard. She was worried that there would be trouble here, so she had arranged for Jing Zhe and Xiao Shui to take turns secretly monitoring the situation. Just now, Xiao Shui had hurriedly reported that the Empress's bodyguards had come to force their way in, so she hurried over. "What's going on?" Qin Yining took a few deep breaths and adjusted her mood. Then, she leisurely walked into the courtyard. Her earlier anxiousness couldn't be seen at all. Seeing Qin Yining arrive, Sun Mama and the young novice monk both relaxed. He calmly moved his hand away from the sword at his waist. Xing Baoshan and the others turned around and saw Qin Yining wearing a light blue waistcoat. She was holding a servant girl's hand as she slowly walked over with the bodyguards. They could only temporarily stop what they were doing and turn around to salute. "Greetings, Princess Consort. You're excused. This is a place to meditate and cultivate Buddhism. It's not appropriate for you to be so noisy, is it not?" Xing Baoshan said without much respect. "Wang Fei's words are incorrect. We are under orders to protect Nyang, so we are responsible for Nyang's safety. Nyang is reciting Buddhism behind closed doors. Can't she show her face? Or is there someone here plotting something and keeping Nyang under surveillance?" As Xing Baoshan spoke, his gaze moved around Qin Yining. The reason he was so anxious to see how the Empress was doing was because they hadn't seen Prince Zhongshuan in the past few days. This one FO temple was filled with strangeness. There was such a large amount of fog in the back of the mountain, but those bald donkeys were still anxiously building the drawbridge. Wang Yi and Wang Fei had come out to play in the name of being a loving couple, but Wang Yi had left Wang Fei in the temple and gone to enjoy himself. The Empress was reciting Buddhist scriptures with some nun and wasn't even willing to show her face. With so many things happening at the same time, how could the bodyguards not be suspicious? Qin Yining walked in front of Xing Baoshan, his expression completely dark. "Bodyguard Aaron, you have to use your brain before you speak. People have to be responsible for their own words." Qin Yining stood in front of the door with his hands crossed. He looked at Xing Baoshan's arrogant eyes and said coldly, "Even though you didn't say who it was, I understand the attack in your words. Your Majesty trusts Wang Yi and arranged for Wang Yi to come build the Imperial Mausoleum. What kind of favor is this? Could it be that your Majesty and my Wang Yi are compatible, but in your eyes, it's not the same? You're worried about the Emperor's safety and are sincere. This is understandable, but you are randomly spreading rumors and disturbing the hearts of the people. You are disturbing Nyang's prayer for the people. This is a big mistake." Xing Baoshan smiled coldly. "It seems that Wang Fei is really not willing to let me see the Empress. Put away your guesses. Whether you see the Empress or not is up to the Empress orders. It has nothing to do with me. I just know that Nyang Nyang is cultivating and can't bear to see you disturb her, so I came to say a few words. If you don't want to listen, then forget it. Don't randomly spread rumors. Wang Fei really knows how to. Enough. At this time, an angry rebuke came from inside the hall. The voice was slightly hoarse, but through the door, it was clear that it was the Empress' voice. Chapter 1000. The sound of footsteps came from inside the room, and then the door was pushed open. The Empress, dressed in a bright red robe with her hair tied up in a high bun, looked angrily at the people in front of her. Everyone lowered their heads and knelt in greeting. Greetings to the Empress. Qin Yining also bowed. Greetings to the Empress. The guards followed etiquette and didn't dare to raise their heads to look directly at the Empress's face. The guards that came with Xing Baoshan were already very regretful. What happened to the Empress? They disturbed the Empress's cultivation. It was not good. Sun Momo looked in shock at the Empress in front of her. At the same time, she let out a breath and had a new understanding of Qin Yining and the Prince Zhongshan Manor's abilities. To be able to create someone like the Empress, how great was their ability? The Empress had a heavy expression as she turned and walked into the hall. Sun Momo immediately stood up and walked towards the door with the food box. The Empress is going into seclusion to pray for blessings. Everyone should leave. Yes. After Qin Yining saluted, she stood up and left with her people happily. Xing Baoshan and the guards looked at each other. Everyone stood up awkwardly. Even said in a low voice, "Brother Baoshan, let's go outside and wait." Xing Baoshan nodded and walked out with everyone with a gloomy face. He kept explaining in a low voice, "It seems that I was thinking too much. I had good intentions and was worried about the Empress's safety." He was also very shocked by the Empress that had just appeared. The Prince Zhongshan Manor could let him know such a big secret. They wouldn't kill him later, right? Thinking this, Heben's palms were covered in cold sweat. He was calculating in his mind and didn't take Xing Baoshan's words to heart. Xing Baoshan saw that Heben didn't speak and thought of how Heben had tried to persuade him, but he refused to listen. He couldn't help but smile and say, "Brother, you see things clearly. In the future, I'll have to rely on Brother He." Heben came back to his senses and shook his head. "Not at all. Brother will treat you to wine later." Xing Baoshan smiled. The group of people headed out. Although Xing Baoshan appeared to be very cheerful, he was actually worried. Just now, he had verbally offended Prince Zhongshan's consort. Now that Wang Yi wasn't here, if Wang Yi came back and knew that he was disrespectful to the consort, he was afraid that the demon would peel off a layer of his skin. In the end, it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. In the future, he would close one eye and close one eye, but he would not dare to do such a thing again. However, there was something strange about the situation on the mountain. As Xing Baoshan thought this, he secretly reported to Qi Tian that the Empress was in seclusion and that Pang Xiao had disappeared. In the Guanyin Hall, Granny Sun put down the food box and looked curiously at the back of the Empress. Seeing the Empress wave her hand at her, she knelt back down on the prayer mat. She knew she would not get any explanation here. She bowed her head and left. Qin Yining returned to the meditation room. When he saw Xieyu, he smiled and said, "This time, it was all thanks to teacher Xie's skillful hands. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to pass this obstacle." Xieyu smiled and said, "It's nothing. It's all thanks to my complete set of tools. I just wanted to find someone with delicate features who had seen the Empress before and who could imitate the Empress's bearing and voice. It was not easy. Fortunately, Wang Yi was surrounded by crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There were many talented people around him. In the end, I managed to catch up." Qin Yining asked curiously, "Teacher chose someone around Wang Yi? Which one is it? Do I recognize her?" Xieyu and Su Weiji looked at each other and laughed loudly. Wang Fei naturally recognizes this person. Right now, the person reciting scriptures in the Guanyin Hall is Tang Xiao. Without waiting for Qin Yining to speak, Jian widened her eyes in shock. "Teacher, you're saying that person is Tang Xiao?" "Yes, but Tang Xiao is not that short. Don't you see that the hem of her skirt is very wide?" Xiaoyu smiled and said, "Actually, if you look carefully, you can see the flaws. However, according to etiquette, no one can look directly at the Empress when they see her. The same goes for the accompanying imperial bodyguards. Therefore, although there are some among the Jinghu Wei who have delicate features and a suitable height, I still chose Tang Xiu because Tang Xiu knows how to imitate the Empress's voice." Qin Yining clapped and praised. "It's all thanks to teacher's wisdom. Isn't that right? When we see the Empress, we have to kneel down and greet her. Who dares to look up and size her up? If it weren't for teacher's help, I'm afraid it would have been very difficult to pass this time." Xiaoyu smiled and waved her hand. She changed the topic and said, "The fog seems to have dispersed a little today." "Yes," Qin Yining said seriously. "When the fog disperses and we can see the other side clearly, the suspension bridge will be repaired soon." Xiaoyu and Su Weiji both nodded. However, at this time, they felt a little awkward, because no one knew what was happening on the other side of the suspension bridge. Under the cover of the sound of the waterfall, they couldn't hear each other clearly. They were also afraid of alerting the people around the Empress, so they didn't speak again. They could only confirm that Pang Xiao was still alive, but they didn't know how the Empress was doing. They could only hope that the two of them were fine. Otherwise, there would be more trouble to come. With Tang Xiu dutifully pretending to be the Empress in Guanyin Hall, and with the cooperation of Sun Mama and He Bin, there were no more disturbances on the mountain in the next 2 days. However, Xing Baoshan's attention shifted from the Empress's safety to Prince Zhongxun, who hadn't shown his face. Occasionally, he would meet the Jinghu Wei and ask about Pang Zhao's whereabouts through idle chatter, but he didn't get any useful answers. Xing Baoshan secretly reported all of this to Li Qitian. On the 6th day of the 7th month, the thick fog finally dispersed. Qin Yining could finally see the other side that he hadn't been able to see clearly since he came up the mountain. Just as Abba Yin said, this place wasn't very wide. Based on Qin Yining's estimation, if Mu Jinghu was here, he might be able to fly over it with his lightness kung fu. The vegetation on Fengyuan Peak was lush, and he could even see a few boulders at the top. There was a pool of spring water on the boulders, and he could faintly see 2 figures beside the forest and the pool, resting in front of a bonfire. Qin Yining didn't dare to shout loudly, for fear that the Empress's guards would hear. But when she saw Pang Zhao's figure, she was extremely excited. Qin Yining tried hard to wave at the other side. Pang Zhao was constantly paying attention to the other side. At this time, he also noticed Qin Yining, so he got up and walked towards a cliff. "Sister E." The voice wasn't soft. Even though it was covered by the sound of the waterfall, if one listened carefully, they could still faintly hear someone shouting. Qin Yining quickly made a shushing gesture and pointed at the backyard of Wan Fo temple behind him. Pang Zhao thought about it and understood. He smiled and nodded, looking at Qin Yining with pity in his eyes. He had been trapped here for a few days, and his sister, he had been worried for a few days. The people around the Empress weren't stupid. Other than thinking of a way to save him, she also had to think of a way to hide the news of the Empress's disappearance. Otherwise, once the news spread, they would all be in trouble. When he walked across the suspension bridge, he knew that the distance between the two sides wasn't far. But the fog hadn't dissipated, and he couldn't see the other side clearly. With the Empress beside him, he didn't dare to act rashly. Now that the fog had finally dissipated, Pang Zhao only wanted to quickly return to Qin Yining's side. If it wasn't for the Empress, he wanted to try and see if Jinghu Wei could throw a rope over. He used his lightness kung fu to return. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji were already in a heated discussion with the master who was building the suspension bridge. Jinghu Wei and the others went to guard the entrance to this place. This was to prevent the Empress's people from seeing the people on Karma Peak. With the powerful Jinghu Wei and the cooperation of Pang Zhao on the other side, the two sides quickly pulled up the rope. Pang Zhao strode back to the side of the pool and said in a low voice, "Nyang Nyang, please follow this official back." The Empress' long hair was loose. Although her red robes were neatly worn, the sleeves and hem of her skirt were torn in many places. Her bare face looked even duller. In addition, She had been eating wild fruits these days, so her complexion was even worse. Thinking that when she returned, she would be the Empress of Dezhou again and wouldn't have a chance to be alone with Pang Xiao, she couldn't hide the disappointment in her heart. That day, the nun told her that if she wanted to pray successfully, she had to come to Karma Peak to experience the tribulation. That day, she didn't understand and believe the words of the person who was skilled in Buddhism. When she came to Karma Peak, she was immediately surrounded by a group of snakes. She screamed anxiously, but no one came to save her. Those snakes surrounded her. It was fine if she stood still, but when she tried to move, those snakes would surround her. When she thought that she would be trapped here and die, Pang Xiao walked out of the thick fog like an immortal and chased away the snakes for her. The suspension bridge collapsed, and they couldn't go back. These days, Pang Xiao was the one who took care of her dutifully. She knew that Pang Xiao was loyal to her as the Empress and respected her as his sister-in-law. But in her heart, she didn't just think that way. She almost couldn't control her love that grew wildly like a vine. She even hoped that the fog wouldn't disperse and that the people on the other side wouldn't discover them. It would be good if she could be trapped here with Pang Xiao for a lifetime. The Empress walked silently to the edge of the cliff. She looked at the ropes swinging in the air and looked at Qin Yining's young face on the other side. She finally understood. The nun didn't lie to her. She did come here to experience the tribulation of love. Your Highness, sorry for the offense. Pang Xiao bowed with his hands folded and then hugged the Empress. He used his kung fu to jump up the rope. His posture was as strong as a rock spreading its wings. In the blink of an eye, he was in the middle of the rope. Perhaps because he was carrying a living person, Pang Xiao's strength was exhausted. Borrowing the force of his falling body, Pang Xiao used one hand to climb on the rope, swung a circle in the air, and then leaped a long distance. Stepping on the rope again, he reached the other side in the blink of an eye. Pang Xiao threw the Empress away and hugged Qin Yining. His lips touched her cheeks and ears, and he whispered, "Sister E, I'm back. It's all right. It's all right." Qin Yining's nose was sour, and tears almost fell. "It's good that you're all right. I know you'll be all right." Pang Xiao patted her back with his big hand. "You were scared that day, right? I couldn't hear what you said, but I heard your anxious cry. Don't worry, I'm all right. The Empress is also all right. She was just trapped by the snakes." Chapter 1001. The Empress's face was unusually pale, her expression tense, her lips tightly pursed. Without any makeup, she looked a few years older than usual. Qin Yining lowered her eyes, not daring to look directly at the Empress's face. She asked respectfully, "Nyang Nyang, how have you been these days?" Her mind spun as she thought of the most tactful way to inform the Empress of the present situation. At the same time, she wanted the Empress to understand her actions and not spread this matter. "This Empress is fine, but this Empress will not let other people know that I am trapped on Karma Peak." The Empress shook her head tiredly, her expression serious. Qin Yining's eyes widened in shock. The Empress's request happened to coincide with her idea. Qin Yining immediately understood. Thinking about it, as the mother of a country, it was already a great humiliation for her to be deceived to this extent, not to mention being trapped on the peak with a foreign official. She was worried that Pang Xiao would be discussed and suspected, and the Empress was also worried about being discussed and suspected. Since both sides were so worried, then the matter was easy to handle. Yes, this subject promises that no one will spread this matter. Nyang Nyang sympathizes with the monks of the temple. Your benevolence is truly admirable. Qin Yining bowed in admiration. The Empress blinked when she heard this and curled the corners of her mouth slightly. It seemed that Qin Yining thought that she was thinking for the monks of Wanfo Temple and was not willing to let these outsiders bear the crime of not being able to protect them. But only she knew in her heart what she was most afraid of. This was an unexpected and beautiful memory for her. It was a secret that she wanted to keep in her heart for the rest of her life. She wanted to slowly reflect on it by herself. She knew that she should not have such thoughts about Pang Xiao. She also knew that such an immoral action was not tolerated by the world. So she had never thought of telling anyone that she was a prostitute, and could only be a qualified prostitute. She would not leave a stain in her life that could not be washed away. But she treated some feelings as treasures and wanted to keep them for the rest of her life. Her experience on Karma Peak, these short few days, was enough for her to reflect on for the rest of her life. I'm tired. The Empress looked tired. Qin Yining thought for a moment, then leaned closer and briefly recounted the events of the past few days. In the end, she said, "Your humble wife had no choice but to find someone to wear your clothes, comb your hair, and pretend to be you. If you don't want anyone to know about this when we go back, we have to do it secretly." The Empress frowned. She was surprised that someone could pretend to be her and fool the guards. But on second thought, she and Pang Xiao were suddenly trapped. Qin Yining was a woman, so it was not easy for her to suppress this matter. She couldn't be picky. All right. The Empress nodded understandingly. It's understandable. How about this? We'll do as you say. This consort will treat it as being in seclusion for 18 days. Nyang Nyang is wise, Qin Yining said with a smile. Then please rest for a while. I'll find an opportunity to send you back to the palace. Qin Yining purposely obscured the entire process. She didn't even say when the guards would change shifts to send someone in. This was to reduce the Empress's wariness. Otherwise, wouldn't the Empress be worried that they would assassinate her if someone could find a gap between shifts to send someone in when the mother of a nation cultivated with so many guards outside? Even though they didn't have such thoughts, it was better to be cautious. Xie Yu and Su Weiji had already made preparations to welcome Pang Zhao's group at any time. Therefore, they had already sent away the people who should be sent away. Qin Yining and Pang Xiao brought the Empress back to the side courtyard where the meditation room was. Qin Yining then told Sun Mama and He Bin that the Empress had safely escaped danger. The two were so happy that they almost jumped 3 feet high. Naturally, they did their best to cooperate with Qin Yining's arrangements. That night, the person in Guanyin Hall became the real Empress. Tang Xiu finally didn't have to sit inside and eat the snacks that she had secretly brought. She also had to maintain her composure and occasionally pinch her throat to speak. Pang Xiao bathed and changed his clothes. He also shaved his beard clean. After wolfing down a vegetarian meal, he went to bed early. Qin Yining also slept soundly. He wasn't in a hurry to ask Pang Xiao about what happened on Karma Peak. The next morning, as usual, Qin Yining brought people to pay respects to the Empress. As usual, he was politely stopped by Sun Mama. After returning to the room, he asked Pang Xiao about what happened that day. Pang Xiao recounted everything in detail. Then, he said with a heavy expression, "I still can't figure out what the person who tricked the Empress to Karma Peak was planning. The Empress wasn't harmed. When I went there, a group of snakes surrounded her and made her unable to move. However, those snakes didn't bite her. The suspension bridge collapsed, and I couldn't cross. You couldn't hear me. Therefore, I ate wild fruits with the Empress to pass the day. It wasn't difficult to eat and drink. Because there wasn't any other danger, I was even more suspicious of that person's motive. He tricked the Empress and lured me over. What was his motive?" Qin Yining pursed his lips and shook his head. "Looking at it this way, it seems like the other party deliberately trapped you and the Empress there. I think it was to dig a hole for me to jump into." Qin Yining couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Tianjizi has always disliked me. She wanted to get rid of me several times. Although she doesn't want to kill me now, she still wants to kill me. I think she's happy to make things difficult for me. You're already sure that the Shurtai is Tianjizi? Who else could it be other than her?" Qin Yining shook his head. Mu Jinghu was Pang Zhao's brother. Qin Yining didn't want to make things difficult for Pang Xiao. Therefore, he didn't continue on this topic and change the topic. Although the matter has been resolved, it still caused quite a commotion. That day, when the guards tried to force their way in, there was already an argument. In addition, the Empress's guards aren't simple people. They also know that you weren't in the temple these few days. Even if they didn't think that you and the Empress were trapped on Karma Peak, they would still think that you took advantage of this time to secretly do something. Pang Xiao couldn't help but laugh. "Your Majesty might have already received the information about what you said and know that I've been restless these few days. Pang Jishi, this brat, instead of praying to the gods and Buddha to pray for the prosperity of the country and the safety of the people, he ran off alone to plot against me. Pang Xiao imitated Li Qiqian's tone to 80%, and Qin Yining couldn't help but laugh. All right. It's good to be able to go back safely. Not only did we avoid the harassment of the Titan during this period of time, when we left, I think that Zhong Yibo has already thought about how to move the treasure when we return. Pang Xiao snorted softly. He's a smart person, but sometimes it's useless to only be smart if you want to get things done. You also need to cooperate with the real situation. Si Qin is also resourceful. He also participated in the fight for the treasure and knows about this. If Lu Hong reveals too many flaws, Si Qin will also be vigilant. At this point, Qin Yining was a bit worried for Lu Hong. He'll have to work harder. Otherwise, you'll have to trouble yourself. Qin Yining was originally a bit unhappy when talking about Lu Hong, but seeing that Qin Yining was wholeheartedly thinking about him and didn't care about how difficult it was for Lu Hong, Pang Xiao felt very carefree. He smiled and said, "You also have to believe in him. Sooner or later, he'll think of a way. In any case, Her Majesty the Empress will be in seclusion for a while. Let's stay here for the time being and help Wanfo Temple fix the suspension bridge. It can be considered doing a good deed." Qin Yining nodded. That suspension bridge was broken because of us, so we naturally have to fix it. In the next few days, the Empress really did go into seclusion with peace of mind. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining also brought people to help Wanfo Temple deal with the matter of the suspension bridge. Pang Xiao's sudden return naturally caused Xing Baoshan to send a secret letter to Li Qiqian. However, Pang Xiao didn't care about it at all. He chose the lesser of two evils. Being suspected by Li Qiqian was better than being suspected by Li Qiqian. In any case, even if he didn't do anything, Li Qiqian would still be suspicious of him. In the blink of an eye, it was the 20th of July. It was the day the Empress finished her seclusion. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining personally led people to welcome the Empress. Abbot Xianyun was naturally among them. Her Majesty the Empress has lost a lot of weight. Qin Yining went up to support the Empress, who had lost a lot of weight and was extremely tired. He sighed and said, "Her Majesty the Empress prayed for the people. Heaven and earth can bear witness to her sincerity. The Bodhisattva will definitely bless Her Majesty the Empress's wishes to come true and be safe and smooth." The Empress smiled and said, "I'll count on your auspicious words." Her voice was faint. Clearly, she was extremely tired. Only she knew that she was only sighing at Qin Yining's stupidity. If she followed Qin Yining's words and her wishes came true, there was an 80% chance that Qin Yining would cry, right? The Empress rested on the mountain for another 2 days before bringing up the matter of going down the mountain with Pang Xiao. At this time, the suspension bridge had been rebuilt. Not only did Pang Xiao not take a single cent from Wanfo Temple, he also gave a large sum of money and food. Since the matter was done, naturally the Empress said to go down the mountain, so they went down the mountain. What surprised Pang Xiao was that when they went down the mountain, the Empress didn't yell about her body is precious and cannot be touched by imperial bodyguards. Pang Xiao didn't take the initiative to ask, and the Empress didn't make any requests. Pang Xiao just took Qin Yining and waited for a long time at the foot of the mountain. The imperial bodyguards took turns to carry the Empress down safely. "Nyang Nyang, the carriage is ready. We can set off at any time." When everyone was ready, Sun Momo came forward to ask. The Empress sat in the luxurious carriage covered with brocade curtains. She lifted the curtains slightly and looked back at the steep Jihuang Mountain. Then she looked at Pang Xiao's group and smiled. "Go ask Prince Zhongshuan when we will set off. We will travel together." "Yes." Sun Momo immediately went to carry out the order. Pang Xiao and Qin Yining didn't plan to continue sightseeing. They couldn't really leave the Empress behind. Naturally, they would agree to whatever the Empress asked. The 2 carriages went to Huichuan County. The journey was peaceful, but halfway through the journey, the group met a man and a horse coming from the direction of Huichuan County. The young rider on the horse was wearing an iron-gray, round-collared sunflower gown. He was obviously a lieutenant. When he saw Pang Zhao's group, he immediately slowed down and pulled on the reins. The yellow horse reared and neighed. "Is that Prince Zhongshuan's group in front?" "Yes." Tang Xiu went forward to answer. Chapter 1002. Pang Xiao pushed open the carriage door and asked with a smile, "This eunuch should be the person who serves the emperor, right?" He had many opportunities to enter and leave the palace, but he only noticed the people around Li Qitian. He didn't know much about Xiaomin, but he found her familiar. "Wang Yi, please remember, this servant is indeed you." Xiaomin bowed with a smile. Whether Pang Xiao knew him or not, as long as he knew that he was the emperor's person, it was enough to show him respect. Pang Xiao smiled and said, "Your Majesty sent Lord Ma?" "Yes." Xiaomin smiled and walked closer, saying respectfully, "Your Majesty said that the weather is good, so the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum will continue. The matter of escorting the Taitan Khan will be handed over to Lord Ma. In this way, Wang Yi and Zhong Yibo can focus on the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum." Pang Xiao was moved and cupped his hands in the direction of the capital. "This official thanks Your Majesty for your understanding." The Empress in the other carriage also lifted the curtain. "Does Your Majesty have any orders for me?" Xiaomin quickly turned and bowed to the Empress. "Greetings, Your Majesty. Your Majesty ordered this servant to serve Your Majesty and ask Your Majesty to follow Lord Ma and the Taitan Khan back to the capital." When the Empress heard this, she only smiled faintly and nodded, but her heart felt like it was being pricked by needles. Your Majesty gave the order, so she had to go back. But she was reluctant to leave this place, reluctant to give up her freedom, and even more reluctant to leave Pang Xiao. No matter how well she hid her thoughts, it was good to be able to spend more time with Pang Xiao. But now, what else could she do except thank him? "I know. I will definitely act according to Your Majesty's orders." The Empress put down the curtain after saying this. Forget it, forget it. There were some things that she could never do, and some people that she could never get. Since there was no hope, why should she make things difficult for herself? Pang Xiao then ordered his men to welcome Xiaomin into the team, and the group of people rushed back to Huichuan County. Seeing Pang Xiao escorting the Empress back, naturally Lu Heng wanted to bring his family and friends to welcome them. That very day, they arranged a banquet at the other courtyard. The Empress said, "Whatever Your Majesty instructs, you must do your best to accomplish. This consort will be returning to the capital tomorrow. What do Prince Zhongshuan and Zhong Yibo think?" Pang Xiao and Lu Heng both shook their heads and smiled, indicating that they would obey the Empress' orders. Assistant Minister Ma smiled and said, "The Empress Dowager is about to arrive. Your Majesty's intention is to have Her Highness take charge of the harem. It will be best for you to return as soon as possible." The Empress nodded her head in agreement. After the banquet, Assistant Minister Ma personally went to the courier station to inform Taitan and the others that they would set off the next day. That night, everyone was busy and no one could sleep well. The next morning, Qin Yining got up early and dressed up. After hastily eating breakfast with Pang Xiao, he hurriedly went to the city gate to see off the Empress and Si Qin's entourage. Taitan's tribute procession was lined up outside the city. Si Qin and Kudun had already boarded the carriage. The Empress also boarded the carriage and sat in it with a dignified expression. Concubine Zhuang boarded the carriage behind. Qin Yining and Bian Ruhan went up to the left and right of the Empress and bowed respectfully. This subject respectfully sends Her Highness off. The Empress then looked down at Qin Yining and Bian Ruhan, who were standing outside the carriage. She saw that Qin Yining's expression was calm and composed, while Bian Ruhan's expression was one of patience. It was as if someone owed her something. The Empress thought for a moment and knew that Bian Ruhan was still holding a grudge over what had happened in the past. At the time, she had been able to confidently keep Qin Yining by her side and criticize Lu Heng's actions as a bystander. But now, after the trip to the Thousand Buddha Temple, she had other thoughts, and her attitude naturally changed. She understood what was right and what was wrong, but she also understood how difficult it was to control emotions. She still had to abide by her own status and rules, but she understood the matter between Lu Heng and Qin Yining. Perhaps Lu Heng had feelings for Qin Yining, while Qin Yining was only sincere towards Pang Xiao. Or perhaps Qin Yining and Lu Heng had already communicated. But all of this was a private matter between them that they were willing to do. She was just an outsider, so what reason did she have to interfere? Even if she was the empress, she couldn't meddle in her own affairs. Who could resolve family matters clearly? The empress pretended not to see Bian Ruhan's resentful and angry face. She turned and told Zhuang Pin, "Perhaps Zhong Yiba Foreign doesn't want to part with you, her older sister. How about Ben Gong? Let the procession wait for a moment to give you and Zhong Yiba Foreign time to say goodbye." Ever since Zhuang Pin understood that she had angered the empress last time, she had been careful in her actions and didn't dare to make any mistakes. Now that the empress had instructed her like this, she couldn't be as righteous as she had been in the past. She hurriedly said respectfully, "Pinky is grateful for empress kindness. But if the auspicious time to return to Jing is delayed because of the matter between Pinky and Tang Mei, Pinky will not be at ease. Everything will be done according to Nyang Nyang's orders." Zhuang Pin saying this was distancing herself from Bian Ruhan. Bian Ruhan originally had a glimmer of hope. She wanted to put her hands on her hips and make a scene in front of the empress, but it was obvious that she had lost this opportunity. Bian Ruhan was on the verge of death. She was too lazy to argue with Lu Heng and quietly returned home. In the Wang residence, Qin Yining and Pang Xiao invited Su Weiji and Xie Yu to the reception pavilion in the backyard to talk. Pang Xiao went straight to the point. "Your Majesty means that since the rain has stopped, we should start building the Imperial Mausoleum. I'm a supervisor. Whether this matter is done well or not, I will be responsible for it in the future. Since the rain has stopped in Huichuan County, we should really start building it." Wang Yi is right. Qin Yining narrowed his eyes and said, "Your Majesty must be anxious now. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left Zhong Yiba behind. Didn't Zhong Yiba ask for a thorough investigation of the stone materials? It won't be easy for us to move while he's investigating the stone materials. It won't be good if we disrupt his progress." "That's true, but this is only the first problem," Pang Xiao said with a smile. Qin Yining raised his eyebrows in surprise. "What? Is there something else that I don't know?" "That's what I want to talk about today." Pang Xiao went to the table and took out a booklet. "This is the record of the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum in the past few years." Qin Yining took it and flipped through it briefly. He knew that it recorded some of the things that happened when the Imperial Mausoleum was being built. For example, how much money the Imperial Mausoleum spent, how much grain they ate, and how the Imperial Mausoleum reacted at the time. Just from looking at the booklet, the Imperial Mausoleum's life should be much better than when they were at home. They can eat their fill when they're building the Imperial Mausoleum, but many people can't bear to eat grain when they're at home. "That's right," Pang Xiao nodded. "But the weather has been clear for many days now. Lu Heng and I started recruiting Imperial Mausoleum when we left the capital, but they haven't arrived yet." Qin Yining was stunned when he heard this. "That's true. If the Imperial Mausoleum hasn't arrived, Your Majesty's order to start construction as soon as possible cannot be carried out. If they delay important matters, Your Majesty will blame them, and Pang Xiao will be the one to blame. After all, Pang Xiao was the chief supervisor of the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum, and Lu Heng was just a county magistrate. Although the county magistrate should cooperate with Pang Xiao, he didn't have to bear the main responsibility. As for the previous county magistrates who were unlucky, it was all because if the supervisor wanted to embezzle money, he couldn't surpass the county magistrate, and the county magistrate would be dragged down for various reasons. The Imperial Mausoleum hasn't arrived yet. Do you know what the reasons are? Su Weiji took the booklet from Qin Yining and flipped through it. Pang Xiao said, This time, the Imperial Mausoleum has been recruited from both the local and the surrounding counties. Aside from Huichuan County, the neighboring Danfu County is more prosperous and has more able-bodied men. 40% of the Imperial Mausoleum's population is from Danfu County, and the rest are from the surrounding counties. Now, these people seem to have made an appointment, but none of the Imperial Mausoleum's Imperial Mausoleum has arrived. Chapter 1003. Xiaoyu nodded and slowly said, Wang Fei, this old man thinks that if we want to investigate, we should focus on Danfu County. Danfu County's commoners make up 40% of the population. If we take care of this area, we will have taken care of half of the population. Moreover, the commoners all want to follow the crowd. Danfu County is also the largest county among all the counties. When the commoners come from Danfu County, the other counties will follow suit. Exactly. Su Weiji also said, the most important thing is that Danfu County's County Magistrate Chung Darren has an extraordinary background. This old man and brother Xie deliberately investigated when we saw the Register of Commoners. That County Magistrate Chung is the disciple of Minister Lu's disciple. Minister Lu was Lu Heng's grandfather, the previous head of the Lu family. Qin Yining frowned when he heard this. Whenever I hear that someone or something is related to the Lu family, I feel irritated. The commoners have not come yet. Clearly, County Magistrate Chung has done something. It could be Lu Boy's signal. Pang Xiao smiled freely. It's not important. There's no need to worry. Have we not encountered many difficult situations? It's nothing more than a general blocking soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. Seeing Pang Xiao so free and easy, Qin Yining couldn't help but smile. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji's tense expressions relaxed when they saw this. Pang Xiao said seriously, the most important thing right now is to find out why the commoners of Danfu County have not come yet. Then we can find the right remedy. If County Magistrate Chung has done something, then it's fine. I will have to use my status to pressure him. But if the problem lies with the commoners, then it will be difficult to deal with. Exactly. Qin Yining frowned and said, although it is the imperial court's decree to have the commoners build the imperial mausoleum, in the eyes of the commoners, you are the person in charge. If the commoners are not willing to come, then if you force them, I'm afraid it will arouse their anger. At that time, it will ruin the reputation we have built up over a long period of time. At worst, it will cause a rebellion. Wouldn't that give your majesty a reason to punish you? Xiaoyu said, Princess Consort is right. Moreover, if this matter is not resolved properly and the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum is delayed, it will also attract the blame of your majesty. Zheng Yiba, good plan. Su Weiji sneered. By killing 2 birds with 1 stone, he was able to attract Wang Ye's attention and lead Wang Yi to solve the problem of the commoners, giving him time to deal with the treasure under the pretext of investigating the stone materials. At the same time, he took the opportunity to frame Wang Yi. This person's cunning methods cannot be underestimated. Pang Xiao smiled and said, since we're standing on the opposite side, there's nothing we can do. In order to win or lose, we can only rely on our own abilities. But what should we do about the investigation? Qin Yining pondered for a moment before he slowly said, I'm afraid that it won't be a good idea to send someone over. If we act rashly and alert the enemy, I'm afraid that it will delay our plans. I have a suggestion. Oh, Xiaoyu and Su Weiji both looked expectantly at Qin Yining. Princess Consort, you've thought of a solution so quickly? Pang Xiao looked expectantly at Qin Yining. Tell me about it. Qin Yining smiled. Since Zheng Yiba might be deliberately causing trouble for you in order to send you away, why don't we go along with his wishes and give him time to leave Huichuan County openly? This way, we won't have to be tied up and delay our important matters. We can also concentrate on solving the problem of the commoners and not let your majesty punish you. Princess Consort is right. Xiaoyu also said, why don't we beat him at his own game and leave Huichuan County, letting Lu Boy handle the matter of the treasure? Qin Yining nodded and said, as for going to Danfu County to investigate the commoners, I suggest that we work on both sides. Su Weiji stroked his long beard and nodded with a smile. Princess Consort is right. This old man also thinks that this is a good idea. When Qin Yining heard this, he knew that Su Weiji had the same idea as him. He didn't continue speaking and gave the opportunity to speak to his strategist. Su Weiji said, "This old man thinks that it's best to have one in the light and one in the dark. Wang Yi will naturally be in the light, and the commoners won't go to Huichuan County. This matter isn't a secret, so it's reasonable for Wang Yi to go to Danfu County to investigate. This way, Magistrate Cheng's attention can be diverted, and it'll be easier for the other team to secretly go to Danfu County to investigate." This is a good idea. Xiaoyu nodded in agreement. As for the team that secretly goes to Danfu County, there's no need for them to act sneakily. They can disguise themselves as merchants and openly do business in Danfu County. It'll be easier for them to meet people from all walks of life and gather information. Pang Xiao nodded and said, "This is a good idea. Why don't Mr. Xie and Mr. Su disguise themselves as merchants?" Wang Yi. Qin Yining interrupted Pang Xiao and said seriously, "Why don't I disguise myself as a merchant and bring Jingzhe and the others there? It's most appropriate." Pang Xiao frowned and said disapprovingly, "You're going? That's too dangerous." "What's so dangerous about that?" Qin Yining smiled and said, "Which one of the things that we've encountered in the past wasn't dangerous? This time, we're just pretending to be merchants to do business. It's the easiest. Gathering information is the silver-masked spy's specialty. It's enough for me to bring Jingzhe and the others." Then, he explained to Xiaoyu and Su Weiji, "The two of you can naturally do this well, but many people know that the two of you are Wang Yi's strategists. Since Wang Yi wants to bring everyone out of Huichuan County, it'll be suspicious if two important strategists are missing from his side. I'm a woman, so I don't need to show myself in public. Jingzhe and the others aren't people who attract attention. Most people won't notice that Wang Yi is missing a servant. It's the easiest for me to disguise myself as a merchant, and it'll be the easiest for me to gather information." Qin Yining explained his idea in one breath, then looked at Pang Xiao questioningly. Pang Xiao naturally knew that Qin Yining was right, but he really didn't want Qin Yining to leave his side. Just like every other time, he didn't want Qin Yining to take risks, and he was angry at his own incompetence. Xiaoyu smiled and said, "Wang Yi, this old man thinks that the princess consort's idea is feasible. If the princess consort goes, it'll be better than the two of us." "That's true, but..." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Since you think so, then let's do it. Don't tell me you don't trust me." Pang Xiao naturally trusted Qin Yining's ability. However, he was also worried about Qin Yining's safety. Qin Yining thought for a moment and said, "There really isn't much risk in disguising as a traveling merchant to do business. Wang Yi and I will set off together. When we reach the outskirts of the city, we'll lead the others first. Wang Yi can walk slowly with great fanfare. When I've gathered enough information, I'll come out and meet up with you. At that time, we can enter the city together." Pang Xiao thought for a long time in silence. There really wasn't any other more appropriate method at the moment. After carefully considering the situation, he finally nodded. Since he had made up his mind, he needed to make preparations and disguise himself as a traveling merchant. At the very least, he needed to have a complete set of goods. Fortunately, the local 4-channel number was available. Qin Yining arranged for people to act in secret and easily prepared 2 carts of goods. Pang Xiao personally went to the yamen. Lu Heng smiled and came out to greet him. He cupped his hands and said, "Wang Yi has come in person. This lowly official has failed to welcome you." "Zhong Ba, there's no need to be so courteous." Pang Xiao returned the greeting and smiled as he followed Lu Heng to his seat in the front hall. Lu and Ru brought the tea over and then respectfully left. Lu Heng saw that Pang Xiao was wearing an inky blue robe embroidered with dark flowers. He inexplicably thought that perhaps this was Qin Yining's needlework. Qin Yining was willing to do needlework for Pang Xiao, but he wasn't willing to give him a second glance. His heart felt even more stifled, and he didn't want to be entangled with Pang Xiao any longer. "Wang Yi has graced us with your presence. Do you have any orders?" Lu Heng got straight to the point. Pang Xiao naturally didn't want to waste time with Lu Heng. Lu Heng had been coveting his sister Yi for a long time. If he stayed for too long, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to resist strangling this guy. It's not an order. It's just that Your Majesty ordered the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum. Right now, there have been some problems with the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum. The citizens have not arrived yet. I'm afraid that the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum will be delayed. Lu Heng's expression was grave as he nodded. Wang Yi is right. This lowly official has also learned of this matter. Right now, I am at my wit's end. Speaking to this point, Lu Heng couldn't help but examine Pang Xiao's expression. Seeing him frown and not speak, he couldn't help but say, "However, Your Majesty's decree ordered this lowly official to thoroughly investigate the materials for the Imperial Mausoleum. This lowly official is already badly battered and truly can't do anything else." Lu Heng's expression was full of worry and guilt. He asked, "How does Wang Yi plan to handle this matter?" Pang Xiao said sincerely, "This matter is indeed difficult to handle. This king is already investigated. The citizens selected this time come from this county and the surrounding counties. 40% of them are from Danfu County. This king plans to personally investigate this matter." Speaking to this point, Pang Xiao looked at Lu Heng with a probing and provocative gaze. "This king heard that Danfu County's magistrate Cheng has some connections with your Lu family." Hearing this, Lu Heng's heart skipped a beat, but he immediately felt relieved. The fact that Pang Xiao dared to question him meant that he was furious. He probably blamed Magistrate Cheng's debt on the Lu family. If Pang Xiao didn't question or get angry about this matter, he would suspect that Pang Xiao already knew something behind his back. Lu Heng said fearfully that Cheng Weimin is indeed a disciple of one of my family's ancestors when he was alive. However, this relationship can be said to be close, but it can also be said to be distant. At least, this official and Cheng Weimin only have a nodding acquaintance. Is that so? Pang Xiao's eyes were still doubtful. It was obvious that he didn't trust Lu Heng. Forget it. This concerns whether Your Majesty's Imperial Mausoleum can be built smoothly. This king will definitely investigate this matter thoroughly. If there really is someone instigating the people behind the scenes to obstruct the construction of the Imperial Mausoleum in order to achieve their goal, this king will definitely not let it go easily. At that time, I will definitely report this matter to Your Majesty and ask for Your Majesty's judgment. Even Lu Heng couldn't help but tremble at the obvious threat. Wang Ye's loyalty to the country and selflessness is admirable. He didn't want to pick up on Pang Xiao's words at all. Pang Xiao sneered. "Being selfless and loyal to the country is the most basic thing that you and I should do. What do you say, uncle?" Lu Heng knew that Pang Xiao was threatening him. It was obvious that he blamed Lu Heng for Danfu County's incident. Wang Yi is right. Pang Xiao stood up, snorted, and left with large strides. Lu Heng went up in fear and trepidation to send him off respectfully. He only slowly straightened his back after seeing him out of the yamen. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.